It's now time for The Sit Down with Don Tony.
The Sit Down, where Don Tony talks one-on-one with his followers.
What are you looking at?
About the world of pro wrestling, pop culture, and so much more.
The Sit Down with Don Tony.
And now, your host, Don Tony.
You know, I got to be honest with you. It kind of felt like a bait and switch edition of SmackDown tonight. I mean, I get it. WrestleMania in the books. You got to pull back a little bit. We have Backlash in 1 week. And, you know, it just feels a little bit too pulled back, especially that this is not the Vince McMahon era anymore. This is the new era, the Triple H era. And, you know, it's just, you know, the WWE draft is a big deal. We know it's scripted. We know that everybody works under one brand. But the thing is, you know, you are excited what's going to happen over the next 12 months. I mean, let's look back at years past. Now, we're not going to do recaps, but let's look back at years past. Last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. When they do the draft, the rosters pretty much stick for the whole year. You don't get too many trades. You don't get too many people quitting and becoming a free agent. I mean, we've had that with Brock Lesnar a few times in the past, but, you know, the draft is bigger because it sets up future feuds, future possibilities, a little bit of swerves. And Triple H kind of gave it away tonight when Triple H said that, you know, that drafting someone could also put you at risk of losing someone. And that was the seed planted for when Braun Breaker has been drafted to Raw. Now, to be honest with you, I kind of like Braun Breaker on Raw, especially if they let him get a little bit extra nasty on the microphone. With 3 hours on Raw, I think it allows Braun Breaker to get a little bit more experience, a little deeper on the show. But I got to be honest with you, man. I thought today's draft sucked. I really felt it sucked. Just use logic for a minute. Now, tonight's show, it's a sit down. It's about your questions. We'll get into them momentarily, but obviously there's a few big things that happened over the last couple of days. And I see, based on a few super chats that already came in, there's a few topics you want me to talk about. Tony Khan and his Harvey Weinstein remark. Vince McMahon and his fiery, vicious response through the courts that a lot of press did not talk about because they don't want Vince McMahon to even remotely, not want to say look positive, you know, in a positive light, but maybe, just maybe, Vince McMahon may not have done exactly what he's being accused of. No, I'm not defending Vince McMahon. I still think he's a pig. I would really feel bad for that family, having him as a father and a spouse. But you know, some of what Vince McMahon brought up, I think, is a huge dagger in this case for Janel Grant. We will go over some of that in a little bit. We also got to talk about this dolt, this deaf. What's it called again? Deaf. What's the name of the music? His name is Doug Davis. I can't remember. It's Doug Viper or something. Who's the music company that WWE uses? There's a petition for Def Rebel. Thank you, Def Rebel. Did you all see the video that came out? There's a lot of people petitioning to get rid of Def Rebel in the WWE. And I think it's more because of the shitty music. But I got to be honest with you, this behavior that was caught on video, I know it sounds a little far-fetched right now. It would not shock me if WWE cuts ties with this guy. This guy showed that, talk about a male Karen, and what he did is just disgusting. And, you know, he actually played the race card discrimination card. I think he was the motherfucker putting the race card out there. I got that video. We will show it to you. It's ridiculously bad. Obviously we'll talk about what happened on Dynamite with Tony Khan. I have a few words to say about that as well. We got to be very careful as far as what footage we show tonight because we don't want to get our asses in trouble. But there is a couple of things I can show you tonight. And then we'll do your questions, and then we'll get out of here. So don't forget, this Monday, Kevin and I will be live on Discord. We might be taking calls. If you haven't heard, we actually, that's the wrong date. That's the right date. There you go. We're going to be taking calls on Monday, either this Monday or next Monday. We set up a phone line again. I believe it's 888-844-DTKC. I think that's the number. So we'll start taking calls again in the very near future. We want to gradually blend them in, and we don't want to have the same people calling in every single week. So we're going to set up the phone system a little bit differently this time around, but that's coming as well. So give you a chance to get a little feedback on the shows. Now, what do you want me to open up with? You want me to open up? But actually, you know what? Let's open up with the draft. Let's just talk briefly about the draft. Now, Roman Reigns pulling himself out of the draft, yes, it eliminates the obvious. If you remember with Monday's show, Kevin and I addressed Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Not even Damian Priest, just Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And we said that SmackDown would have to get the first 2 picks using logic. Because if they don't get the first 2 picks, why would you choose anybody but Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns? And going into today, that made all the sense in the world. Just common sense. Nick Aldis, SmackDown, the 2 obvious picks would be the person who helped make wrestling cool again over the last couple of years, and Cody Rhodes, the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. So how does WWE counter that? Well, they kind of use a little bit of logic. The champions stay on their respective brands, which is something that Kevin and I talked about on Monday as well, that by having Cody Rhodes remain on his brand no matter what, and Damian Priest remaining on his brand no matter what, and Roxanne Perez remaining on her brand no matter what, and Trick Williams remaining on NXT no matter what, that's the obvious way to go. And that's exactly what they did. Now, if you tuned in for my Patreon family and our channel members on YouTube, we had a long discussion about Trick Williams. Trick Williams, even though people believe that Trick Williams may end up being a bigger WWE superstar than Carmelo Hayes, and Carmelo Hayes had a great match tonight against Cody Rhodes, but I'm not all in with Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes is at his best when he's a heel. He is not inspirational. He's not sympathetic. He's not charismatic when he's a babyface. It's too corny. His one-liners are too, goofy. He's got to be that cocky heel that you just want to take that nose and punch it and break it. Carmelo Hayes is suited to be a heel, period. And I think that's the way they're going to go. Today it was a sign of respect, Cody Rhodes, but Melo's got to be a heel. But Trick Williams, you got to understand, guys, Trick Williams, if you pay attention very closely, he has dramatically improved over the last 12 months, but he still has a lot to go. And allowing him in NXT for another year just gets him that much better. A year ago, when Kevin and I talked about the draft, we were convinced Braun Breaker was the main roster star a year ago. And what did WWE do? They kept him in NXT for another year. And a year ago, it kind of seemed baffling, but now it made sense. With so much else going on between Raw and SmackDown, what if Braun Breaker was a main roster star over the last 12 months? Would he have been Intercontinental Champion? No. Would he have been United States Champion? I don't know. Maybe. He's not going to feud for anybody for any heavyweight championship. You had the Bloodline, you had the Judgment Day, you had Seth Rollins, and then CM Punk, and you go down the line. What was Braun Breaker going to do? Just squash people for 5 seconds? You run through that roster in about 3 weeks doing that. You're not going to start bringing in indie guys just to get squashed for a week. That's going to give Ryback vibes after a little while. So putting Braun in NXT for another year was great. Roxanne Perez is another one. Everybody and their mother wants to see Roxanne Perez on the main roster right now. And I said this on Tuesday on the Patreon show. Roxanne Perez just started playing her heel character, and it is not very good yet. If you remember when Bron Breakker was still a babyface in NXT and he started getting heel heat because people were kind of tired of him being the world champion, the NXT heavyweight champion, he slowly started to change his attitude. And when Bron Breakker first turned heel, you know, he had to get acclimated to it. He had to get comfortable with it. And within no time, it was like Scott Steiner meets Rick Steiner with a little Bron Breakker twist to it. And Bron Breakker fucking killed it as a heel. It was so good that he became cheered from the fans again. That's because Bron Breakker was allowed the time in NXT every single week to develop and build and test and work and try this and try that. You can't do that in real time on SmackDown. You can't do that in real time on Raw. If you go to the main roster and you're still trying to find your place as a heel and you start getting the what chance and you start NXT, one thing that's beautiful about NXT is it's got the same intimate audience every single week for the most part. When I went to the NXT event on my honeymoon, when Solo Sikoa showed up, surprisingly, and won the NXT North American Championship, you know, and was a main roster guy already. When I went in there, so many familiar faces that you always see on TV every single week. You get that same audience every single week. They are there for the long haul. They're there for the grind to see all the progression that Bron Breakker is doing. It's not a casual fan that just tunes into NXT once in a while, depending on who's wrestling. And then you see a little Bron Breakker here, you see a little there, and you're like, you know, he kind of sucks. You know, this isn't good. He's not really good as a heel. He's still kind of this, that. You know, when you see it as it progresses, you know, it turns into something special. That's what made Tiffany Stratton as good as she is. We watched in real time Tiffany Stratton turn into this great star, and now she's being rewarded on the main roster. I loved her attitude when people wanted her to go up to the roster earlier, and she's like, no, I feel like I need more time. So Trick Williams getting that extra year in NXT is just going to make him that much better. It's going to make him even more ready, and plus, you don't have to worry about him getting lost in the shuffle right now. But getting back to Roman Reigns. Okay, we resolved the Cody problem. All the champions stay on their respective brands. But Roman Reigns, common sense, Roman Reigns would be drafted first. And if you paid a little bit closer attention, the Bloodline was drafted as a cohesive unit. Roman Reigns would have to have been drafted with the Bloodline because it's still a bloodline. Solo Sikoa did not kick out Roman Reigns. We haven't seen that happen on camera yet. So he would have had to have been drafted with the bloodline. And if you saw the segment with Solo Sikoa when he arrived in a limo and he said to Paul Heyman, you know, we got drafted, right? And Paul Heyman says no. And Paul Heyman said Roman pulled himself out of the draft. So as a result, Nick Aldis, Adam Pearce don't know who they're getting. You're adding members. You know, and then the MFT gets into his face, Paul Heyman's face, and Paul Heyman, it's like stuttering. So that kind of resolves Roman Reigns. Still kind of bullshit. You know, why would Roman Reigns pull himself out? Yes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. The longer Roman Reigns is out, the louder the "We Want Roman" chants will generate, especially once they have Backlash in France. We found out tonight that Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga is going to be taking on Randy Orton and Kevin Owens in France for Backlash. And this will be Tama Tonga's first official match televised for the WWE. So now we go to the actual draft. So with Roman Reigns out of the way, Cody Rhodes out of the way, then your first thinking is, okay, let's think of Raw and think of SmackDown. Who would have been your number one pick? From both rosters right now, everybody who's live in the chat, who would have been, outside of Roman and Cody, who would have been your first pick on SmackDown tonight if the entire roster was available? Okay, Roderick says Drew McIntyre. There's no bad choice here. Chad says Sheamus. OTS Tribal Queen says CM Punk. Me, I would have choose Gunther. Jag says Gunther. Michael Gonzalez says Seth Rollins. Dayhawk says CM Punk. All good choices. So for me, I'm like, okay, first pick will be Gunther. But no, the first pick ends up being Bianca Belair. Out of the entire women's roster, Bianca Belair, actually, I take that back. Out of the entire WWE roster, Bianca Belair, over everybody we just said. Now, I know some of you that are jumping the gun, I know what you're about to say. I already know about the available stars. We're getting to that. So, Bianca Belair is chosen. And I'm like, is this sign to come? And then for Raw, the number one draft pick is Jey Uso. And listen, I'm a fan of Jey Uso. The Usos are reforming in, this year, to set up, obviously, a bloodline infighting. But Bianca, SmackDown, Jey Uso on Raw. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And then we go back to SmackDown for round one, and they choose Carmelo Hayes. No Braun Breaker, no Gunther. Carmelo Hayes, out of everybody. Carmelo Hayes, and I'm like, oh, get the fuck out of here. This draft already is a joke. And then the final person for round one, Seth Rollins. Okay. So Bianca Belair and Carmelo Hayes, SmackDown. And for Raw, Jey Uso, Seth Rollins. So now if we examine that, nobody moved. Everybody was already on those brands. Melo's been featured on SmackDown. Bianca Belair is already on SmackDown. Jey Uso and Seth Rollins are already on Raw. Nobody moved. So I'm like, this really sucks. Then I said, let me do a little research. Then I found this. And I think a lot of you out there probably didn't even know this. Maybe if you tuned in tonight, you might have seen a graphic pop up, but the entire roster was not available tonight. And for those on audio only, I will tell you who was available tonight because it was not a large selection. And when I read you this list, you say to yourself, okay, all right, now I understand who was picked. The choices were AJ Styles, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, Alpha Academy as a group, Andrade, Bianca Belair, Braun Breaker, Cedric Alexander, and who's his tag team partner? Cedric Alexander and I'm drawing a freaking blank. God. We were just criticizing him too. Ashante Adonis. Yeah, the Ashante Adonis. Ivar, Jey Uso, LA Knight, Liv Morgan, Nia Jax, Randy Orton, Ricochet, Seth Rollins, Shayna Baszler, Sheamus, Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga and Paul Heyman, Gallows and Anderson, Meechin, and Meechin would be with Gallows and Anderson, and Zoe Stark. So that was your selection tonight. That was it. So now when you look at this, out of this pool, I probably would have chosen either Seth Rollins. Hey, if you really want to talk about the future, I would have maybe even considered Braun Breaker. Randy Orton is not a bad choice either. So now when you look at this list, and even on the women's side of things, the only women's wrestlers available tonight was Bianca Belair, Maxine Dupree is part of Alpha Academy, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark, Meechin, Liv Morgan, and Nia Jax. That's it. That's it. So now you understand why this draft tonight absolutely sucked. Now, yes, Roman is on that list because this list came out before they did the storyline on SmackDown that Roman pulled himself out of the draft. So, why in storyline Nick Aldis didn't insist that Roman stays in the draft? Otherwise, he's, well, you could say suspended, and Paul Heyman will say, he's still not here. It's okay. They don't want Roman Reigns to be in a negative light. They also want people to think that possibly this was a Solo Sikoa dick move also. But that was your selection tonight. Now, before I show you who's available for Raw, because there are some notable names missing on the Raw draft pool, let me give you the recap of the 4 rounds tonight. And it's very underwhelming, to say the least. Now, I should add one other thing. Did you notice no NXT stars in there? Now, I know some people wanted you to believe today that Braun Breaker got called up today. No, Braun Breaker was already signed to SmackDown. Triple H's opening speech on SmackDown tonight was designed to prepare you for the curveball that somebody, could be, taken off of a roster because, you drafted someone else instead. The idea was Nick Aldis just signed Braun Breaker, but he decided to draft somebody else instead, and Adam Pearce snatched Braun Breaker from Nick Aldis. That's what the story was tonight. Because I saw a lot of people, what the hell was that? Why did you even bother with Braun Breaker on SmackDown? Well, because you wanted to acclimate him. Maybe you just wanted a little bit extra interesting, like, hey, he's so in demand that Adam Pearce stole him from SmackDown. They will use the term stolen. You will hear them use the word stolen in the very near future. So, your round 1, Bianca Belair, Jey Uso, Carmelo Hayes, and Seth Rollins. Your round 2, Randy Orton, Braun Breaker, Nia Jax, and Liv Morgan. Again, when people were having their panties in a bunch, men included, how could you choose Nia Jax as the first woman outside of Bianca Belair? Well, they probably did not know that there was a very limited draft pool tonight. So Nia Jax was chosen for SmackDown. So Nia Jax, and I think Kevin and I even said on Monday that Nia Jax is probably better suited on SmackDown. She's better suited to feud with Bayley. Bayley needs some big-time heels, and Io Sky, we got that feeling Io Sky is going to be drafted to Raw, guys. Round 3, LA Knight, Ricochet, The Bloodline, and Sheamus. That was your round 3. And your round 4, AJ Styles, Alpha Academy, Andrade, Kiana James. Remember when Kevin and I said you got to put Andrade on SmackDown? We need all Latinos to be fighting each other except for Dominik Mysterio. Remember that conversation? We were accused of being racist for saying that Monday. No, you want the Latinos, the LWO and Legado feuding into the summertime. Andrade being on SmackDown helps him. And by the way, they did the reveal today that Carlito was the one to attack Dragon Lee. So now Carlito will be with Legado and Andrade will be with Rey. And now you got 2 more names that could actually feud with each other. So Kiana James was pretty much the only one to be drafted from NXT today. Kiana James, hey, if you have not watched NXT, Kiana James is pretty good. They got to change her gimmick, though. The character that she's got is a little bit too campy. It's a little too corny. They will absolutely tweak it a little bit. But Kiana James, she is definitely one. She's not going to get the push yet, but she will get some buzz. Now, I don't want to cause any controversy, but I was told that a certain female was let go in the WWE, and she just has not announced it as of yet. I'm not going to say who it is. If you tuned in to last Friday, we brought up Indus Sher, and we ended up being right. We brought up someone else, and we ended up being right. After that, I even said it on Monday. I don't like doing that. I don't like mentioning names before they're made official because I don't want to be looked at back as one of those guys that revealed names and then ended up not being released. But there is a female, a pretty good one too. It may have been not used all that spectacular. And I'm not talking about Xia Li, obviously. She's already let go, but she has not made it public as of yet. But if you look at the Raw draft pool, you will find some names noticeably absent. You could figure out who they are, but here's the roster that is available on Raw. Now, actually, let me go back because I should bring this up too. We probably will get supplemental drafts tonight. So some of the people on this list will end up doing supplementals. So almost everybody on this list will be drafted. I find it interesting that they have Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark at opposite ends there because Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are being drafted as a tag team. Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark are not. So there is a very good chance we may see Shayna Baszler on Raw and Zoe Stark on SmackDown after this. So this is, again, your draft pool from tonight, and there will be supplementals. If supplementals come in and anybody wants to share it while we're live, I'll be more than happy to share it with everybody as well. Now, here is the draft pool for Raw. These are the wrestlers who are available Monday night. Braun Strowman, DIY, who's being drafted as a tag team, Apollo Crews, Bronson Reed, Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae as a team, Chelsea Green and Piper Niven as a team, CM Punk, the Creed Brothers, and Ivy Nile as a group, Damage Control apparently as a group. So you kind of say to yourself, hey, I would draft Damage Control first or second. You're getting 4 people for the price of 1. Drew McIntyre, Karrion Kross, AOP, Scarlett, and they're going in as a group. And, we'll see what happens there. Now, AOP is wrestling on SmackDown next week against Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. And remember, they've been showing up in NXT a little bit. Now, NXT is going to be drafting people on Raw as well. We did not have NXT drafting anybody tonight. I don't know if anybody took notice of that, but NXT will be drafting people this Monday. So some of the people you see on this list, NXT will be drafting, and they will be going there. And do not be surprised if you see some of the names that Kevin and I talked about last week remaining in NXT for the foreseeable future. So they have Giovanni Vinci and Ludwig Kaiser as well as Gunther together, but they are not being drafted as a team. Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser possibly, but not Giovanni Vinci. Finn Balor, Dominik Mysterio, and Jamie McDonough as a group. Katana Chance and Kaden Carter as a team. Kevin Owens, Santos Escobar, the Legado del Fantasma, they're going in as a team. Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo, as well as Elektra Lopez. Naomi, Natalia, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate as a team. The New Day as a team. Is that fucking, what's his face, Odyssey Jones? That motherfucker's in there again. Odyssey Jones is in there again. That's kind of a joke. Hey, he got paid for a whole year. Good for him. Pretty Deadly is there. Shinsuke Nakamura, Tegan Knox, Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, as well as B-Fab, Tiffany Stratton, Carlito, Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, the LWO, Cruz del Toro, Joaquin Wilde, Zelina Vega, Jade Cargill. That is your draft pool for Monday. So expect Jade Cargill to be one of the first to be drafted. My guess it'll be SmackDown. Bianca Belair is remaining on SmackDown. They are fighting for the tag titles at Backlash, as we all expected. They're taking on the Kabuki Warriors, and a lot of people believe that Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill will become the next tag team champions. as long as they remain tag team champions, they will be featured on both brands. Jade Cargill has made it very, very clear the last couple of days that, hey, she'll work both brands. That's kind of a little way of her saying, yeah, you could make me a tag team champion. I'll work both brands. So Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, most likely to become your next tag team champions. And with Bianca already being on SmackDown, if I'm a betting person, Jade Cargill will also be drafted to SmackDown. Yes, she could be drafted to Raw, and once they drop the tag titles, they could go their separate ways. But a lot of people think we're going to get Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill at WrestleMania next year, which I think is a good possibility. So you want to keep them on the same brand. So that's probably going to happen. So that is pretty much your results tonight with the draft. Couple other things very, very quickly. I want to point out that there wasn't even 30 minutes of wrestling tonight. Yeah, not kidding. Now, me, I don't ever bring that up because if I'm entertained, I don't care how much wrestling I'm seeing on my TV. Yeah, I'm not one, it's like, you ever go to like a really fancy restaurant and they give you like an entree and it's kind of small and you're like, I'm not going to get filled up on this. But you eat it and it's so fucking good. And you're like, you know what? It was small, but it was awesome. I don't care how much. I don't have to eat. I mean, yes, it looks like I eat like a slob, but I don't need to be one of those that I have to have an all-you-can-eat bar in order to get my fill. I don't have to have, like Hong Kong Dynasty. Come in. You could have 3 hours of all wrestling in the ring, 3 hours, 6.5 stars. All you can eat. No, I'll be fine with an hour. Give me good shit. Let me be entertained for the other hour or two, and I'm good. Good. Just don't do it every goddamn week. But today, it was really over the top. Braun Breaker beat Cedric Alexander in, 20 seconds? Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee beat Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza in about 6 minutes. Who else? We had Cody Rhodes and Carmelo Hayes that went about 10 minutes. What other match am I forgetting here? Somebody fill me in. I know. Naomi and Tiffany Stratton, that went to a no contest because Nia Jax showed up. And let me add a couple of things why I really did not enjoy SmackDown tonight. There was a couple other things. If you really look between the lines, it was kind of goofy. The Carlito turn, we expected it. So, I really didn't have a problem with that. It was kind of funny that Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee went so far up the rampway that Carlito, especially as limited as he could be sometimes mobility-wise, he was able to roll out of the ring, and Zelina Vega standing in the corner like, it's not her fault, but it was kind of goofy that Carlito was all by himself and he was able to roll out of the ring like no big deal. I hated the idea of Naomi versus Tiffany Stratton tonight. And I'll tell you why. We knew it was going to be a three-way at Backlash. We knew it was going to be a three-way. They don't want Tiffany Stratton to keep getting jobbed out. And Naomi, obviously, they want to keep in the hunt, even though a lot of it may be smoke and mirrors. Remember, we thought Naomi was going to be teaming up with Bianca Belair for the tag team championships. Then they shifted to Jade Cargill. Now, since she's on the main roster. But how they did it was, remember last week, Tiffany Stratton spoiled it. She spoiled it for Naomi. So now you think in storyline or common sense, Bayley is going to defend her championship at Backlash. So Bayley comes out and says, you know what? It was my idea. This was actually said tonight. It was my idea that Tiffany Stratton and Naomi faced each other tonight. Because if Naomi could beat Tiffany, then I get to face my friend at Backlash. But if Tiffany wins, then I get to beat your ass, so to speak, at Backlash. And I'm saying to myself, if you're that upset that your friend got fucked last week, why would you put your friend in a position where she may not wrestle at Backlash at all? Why would Bayley even remotely give the chance for Tiffany Stratton? Why would she just say, you ruined my friend's opportunity last week. I asked Nick Aldis, I want to face my friend. Go that route. But for Bayley to say, I'm giving my friend a second chance, but if she loses, she ain't fucking fighting me at Backlash. I just thought it was so dumb the way they did that. It was just stupid. A couple other pointless things tonight, with the draft, especially when you actually look back at this recap, everybody in round 1 stood on their respective brands. If you look at round 2, Nia Jax and Braun Breaker switched. Okay. I don't think that's a big deal for a lot of people out there. You go to round 3, everybody's still the same. Sheamus is on Raw already. The Bloodline's already on SmackDown. Ricochet's already on Raw. LA Knight's already on SmackDown. And then you go to round 4. AJ Styles is already on SmackDown. Alpha Academy's already on Raw. The only thing they did was put Andrade on SmackDown, which we all expected should happen. And Kiana James got promoted. If you actually dissect this draft tonight, nothing much fucking happened. And again, maybe we're spoiled with how good WWE has been giving us content going back to last year. And I'm not one of those that every week has got to feel like an orgasm, watching wrestling, that it's got to be amazing, unbelievable. But this tonight was very, very underwhelming. I mean, this kind of felt like a Vince draft. Like, what do you want to do? Oh, boss, I really didn't, I didn't sleep well yesterday. I really didn't think about it. What do you think, boss? I was having intercourse, damn it. I was busy, on the 4th floor, if you know what I mean. So you know what? Let's just promote Kiana and just move Andrade. And we'll just switch Braun Breaker and Nia Jax. All right, sounds like a plan, boss. I love you. I mean, that's really what was this tonight. It was a whole bunch about nothing. And AJ Styles, the contract signing with Cody Rhodes, which was okay. Whenever you want to make a heel be somewhat respectful, you bring up Dusty Rhodes when it comes to Cody Rhodes. Pretty obvious. Any heel that wants to be a little bit respectful but also be a dick, Roman Reigns did it. AJ Styles will do it. Gunther will do it because I think Gunther is a lock for SmackDown. You just bring up Dusty Rhodes and everybody cheers, and then the person ends up continuing to be a dick again. So, all right. So that was your SmackDown tonight. It was kind of let's be honest. So, all right. Before we go any further, let me do a few super shout outs here because it definitely is pertinent through some of the discussion tonight. I see one come in with regards to the draft. Sticky Fingers Frank, we can admit it. Night 1 of the WWE draft sucks. I agree with you 100%. Obviously, Raw will be a much different story here. There'll be a lot of swerves. We got it. I think the biggest story coming out of Monday is to see who gets drafted to SmackDown. Will it be to NXT? Will it be Shinsuke Nakamura? Will it be Karrion Kross? Will it be the Final Testament? Will it be, even Bobby Lashley? There's some weird stuff going around with Bobby Lashley that I don't read too much into it. Oh, and by the way, I saw this come in right before we went live from Frank as well. Did you see how Meltzer got caught lying about the Dominik injury? You and Kev got it right Monday night about his injury, and he doesn't need surgery. Yeah, thank you, Frank, for remembering. If you recall, everybody, 2 weeks ago, we were told specifically what Rhea Ripley's injury was and how long she was going to be out. We ended up being right. We told all of you out there, do not report it as news. We do this for all of you. We don't do it to get, people to say, oh, so-and-so reported. But if you tuned into Monday's show, when we were talking about Dominik's injury, we the same people that we talked to about the Rhea injury, we were told that Dominik injured his elbow, most likely hyperextension, no surgery needed, will not be out all that long. Dave Meltzer reported that Dominik Mysterio needs Tommy John surgery and will be out of action for 9 months. And, I wanted to do this tonight, but I'm not logged into my Twitter, so I really can't. But I invite any of you out there, type in Dominik Mysterio injury on Twitter. And then when you get the search results, type in top or new, or even do a timestamp search. what's hilarious about it is 90% of the websites and the people out there that always rip on Dave Meltzer are the first ones to copy and paste what Dave Meltzer said. I read at least 100 people reporting that Dominik Mysterio tore his elbow, needs Tommy John surgery, will be out 9 months. Dominik Mysterio corrected Dave Meltzer and said, I don't need no surgery. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not going nowhere. And what we ended up reporting Monday was true. So the person who gave us correct information on Rhea Ripley was also correct about the Dominik Mysterio stuff. Dominik did not tear his elbow, does not require surgery, will not be out all that long. So, yeah, listen, I only have 2 pages of notes today because today's about your questions and everything. But somebody sent this to me today about Dave Meltzer. And listen, I'm a fan of Dave Meltzer. I've supported him for decades. He was very, very gracious with me and very generous when I did a couple of charitable things in the past. We don't need to bring them up again. To one of the coolest things that, I will bring up because, it's not, nobody's going to try to like twist it around. When Chris Candido passed, we did a charity drive. Dave Meltzer contacted me and said, what's your address? And I was like, why? He's like, I'm going to send you 150 Wrestling Observer newsletters, tributes to Chris Candido. I'm going to send you 150 of them for free. At that time, the Wrestling Observer newsletter was all print. It was not digital. And he sent me 150 newsletters for free. So everybody that bought one of those Chris Candido shirts that we were selling and all the proceeds went to the family, they got a free Meltzer newsletter along with it. That was very, very generous of him. So, I've always appreciated, doesn't mean I can't criticize his awful reporting and his inaccuracies and his, I'm used to the bias. I don't mind the bias. I've known his fandom for Japanese wrestling for years and years and years. He has a right to really like who he wants, and his readers reflect that. When you see these year-end awards, every year people flip out and call things ridiculously stupid, but they don't know their fan base. Everybody's fan base is different. But somebody pointed out to me that Dave Meltzer, just this year alone, made a whole bunch of mistakes about Grayson Waller and Austin Theory being pulled from the ladder match at WrestleMania. He reported the Dominik Mysterio. He's reported other news wrong. He got criticized from The Undertaker. Even CM Punk absolutely roasted him on the Ariel Helwani interview. Rock buried Dave Meltzer for the stupid reports. Remember about the roster and everything else? One after the other. And, I hate to say it, but Kevin and I had this conversation earlier this year. It's the beginning of the end for the newsletters, period. It's not just because it went from print to digital. A lot of the credibility is gone. And a lot of the sources are gone. When TKO bought WWE, you got to understand that this is an outside organization. And the wrestlers that used to leak things to their friends in the wrestling world, because in return, they would get a little bit of fundage. They would get a little bit of, favors back. But not only that, they would get positive press. They're not going to risk their jobs and leak out information that shouldn't be leaked out. And TKO finds out about it. TKO doesn't have that personal attachment. You see other people losing their employment. It's nothing personal. It's just business. Some people are retiring, but you see the wrestling world. Oh my God, Sue Atchison. She's been there since cavemen. Why did they let her go? She's one of the most beloved people. How's about she's almost 75 and she wanted to retire and live the rest of her years comfortably? And TKO was going in a younger, different direction because they're the new owners. Yeah, even Conrad confirmed that. That's the story. It's boring. Do you see all the ridiculous bullshit this week that Vince McMahon is starting his own wrestling promotion? Now Jeff Jarrett is going to join. I tell you, it's unbelievable the amount of lies going around with that shit. And pointed out how bad Dave Meltzer's been with the reporting this year. It's the beginning of the end for some of these newsletters. They don't have the sources that they used to. TKO ain't having that shit. And that's why even with releases, you're not hearing about releases unless the wrestlers tell them yourselves. Cameron Grimes got let go. Cameron Grimes, with all due respect, guys, we just said it 2 weeks ago. Remember when he showed up on SmackDown and got crushed by Braun Breaker in 30 seconds? And I think it was Corey Graves. No, it was Wade Barrett that's, no. Yeah, it was Wade Barrett that said, oh, he just wants an opportunity. I'm like, he's like Dana Brooke with balls. Like, I've heard that 7 times with Cameron Grimes since he's been on the main roster. Cameron Grimes was not working out. And listen, Cameron Grimes, I'll say this. I hear nothing but good things about this guy. And he just did an interview, I think, with Fightful. And he was talking about how, and I'm sorry if this rubs people the wrong way, but I'm just calling it like I see it. He was talking about in his interview that he has been told, since he was released, he has been told more than anything else how good of a person he is. He got support from the WWE roster and beyond. Logan Paul went out of his way. And listen, it was busted open, not Fightful. It was busted open. And by the way, did you feel the feeder question? Hey, Cameron, Trevor, anybody reach out to you that you least expected? Yeah, that was a rehearsed question in advance. Well, to matter of fact, yes, Logan Paul reached out to me. Oh my God, the feeder questions. But let me tell you something. Cameron Grimes was talking about how big and important it was to him that people were going out of their way to tell him more that he is a good person than his wrestling. And I'm like, get out of fucking wrestling. And I don't mean that literally. I mean, he's obviously, great at what he does. It just didn't work out in WWE. But no, you should not be on Busted Open and saying, it's very, very important to me that almost everybody is focused more about me being a good person than bringing up my wrestling. And I'm like, motherfucker, that's why you were let go. That's why you were let go. Because you couldn't get your character to click with the WWE Universe. You didn't even try on social media. You didn't even make a goddamn attempt. I deserve an opportunity. Go on TNA. Return to TNA and team up with the Elegance. I read that from the Busted Open interview, and I'm like, what's the matter with you? What's the matter with you? Being a good person means guts in the entertainment world. Entertain me, motherfucker. I don't care if you're a dick. Entertain me. I think CM Punk is probably the greatest example of that over the years. Just entertain me, damn it. Stay out of trouble. You could be an asshole, but not be a criminal at the same time. So I saw that. I was just like, oh, God, what a bad take, man. No wonder why you were let go. All right. Let's talk about this douchebag, Doug Davis. Is that his name, Doug Davis? I want to be clear over here. Def Rebel. I didn't even know who this guy was before today. All I kept hearing in the past was Def Rebel's music sucks. In fact, I even think it was a Patreon question Tuesday. Like, you think WWE should go back to Jim Johnston or CFO or somebody else. And, this guy popped up on my radar today. I got to share with you a video. And even if you're on audio only, no worries, because you hear the audio and it says it all. I think he was in New York. Could somebody just clarify his name before I go further? I think his name is Doug Davis. Def Rebel is the music company that WWE has been using for all their theme music. They used to have CFO. They had a big falling out because of royalties and some other business transactions gone wrong. There's something else about SmackDown tonight. I got to say this now before I forget. You know what I thought was stupid too? And I'm just being honest. We had some special appearances today. Michelle McCool looks beautiful as ever. Tori Wilson, ditto. Very cool to see JBL. Who else was there? Theodore Long. Teddy Long was there. And the Dudleys were there. I thought it was cool to see Devon again. It's just he didn't get, obviously, appearance at WrestleMania much, but Dudley's were there. I thought that was pretty cool. Cody and Triple H did the picks for the first round. But when the Dudleys came out, and this is just me, and look, I'm a lifelong ECW fan. I was a rabid ECW fan since 1994. So when I say this might surprise some people out there. I thought it was ridiculous that the crowd was chanting ECW, ECW to the Dudleys. And I'll tell you why. The Dudleys were in the WWE fucking far longer than they were in ECW. If you think of the Dudleys' WWE career, it is tenfold better and bigger than anything they did in ECW. And that's not a knock on ECW. You look at the roster in ECW, obviously, you're not going to compare the APA to the Public Enemy. You know what I mean? So the roster was very, very limited in ECW. But hearing that crowd chanting ECW, and I'm like, wait a minute, they were in the WWE a hell of a lot longer than ECW, and you're still remembering them from I could see if this was WrestleMania in Philly and they were doing it, but I was like, what about their entire WWE career? After all this time, that's what you think of? That was what I thought when I heard that tonight. So thank you, Psycho. Douglas Davis. All right. I'm not going to spin this. I'm just going to tell you what happened. I don't care what people's nationalities are. I don't care if you're white, black, Asian, Italian, Japanese, Chinese, Mexican. I don't care if you have 10 toes, 13 toes. I don't care if your wife is your sister or your sister is your brother or your brother is your mom. I don't care. I don't care if you're married to 3 people. I don't care if you're straight, gay, bisexual. I mean, I care, but you enjoy your life however you want to enjoy it. The reason I'm bringing this up is because of the video you're about to see and the audio you're about to hear. We did not see the video of the driver. Douglas Davis is too much of a pussy so far to put out the video of the driver. And if I could realize this, and if you could all realize this, you best damn believe this guy realized it. He will not put the video out on the driver. And the reason why I say that is because you hear about the unrest in Israel and Palestine, a lot of racial, unrest, all across the world. He's Jewish, okay? He's married. He's got a couple of children, very, very small children. So I'm 90% sure what happened in New York. I write insurance for a living since 1998. And I know, especially with Uber drivers and the insurance here in New York, when you hire an Uber, you could hire a compact car, you could hire an SUV based on the number of people you have, you could hire a vehicle that's wheelchair accessible, you could hire a limousine, you could hire all different types of vehicles. And when you hire an Uber, it tells you how many people it seats. That's not a suggestion. That's the insurance laws and the requirements. So this guy, Douglas Davis, him and his family, 5 people. He went on Uber and he got a regular vehicle that only seats 4. That is an insurance risk, especially with children. If you have an auto accident as an Uber driver and you have 5 people in the car, plus yourself, it would have been him, the driver, and 4 other people in the back seat. No Uber driver in New York is going to do that. That's why you get an SUV or you get a van. Now, either this Karen didn't want to wait the extra time to get the SUV, or he was too cheap to pay the extra money for the SUV. So with 5 people, he ordered a car that only seats 4. The driver said, I can't take you where you have to go. You have 5 people, I can only have 4. If you listen to the driver, listen to his accent. What does this guy do? He accuses the driver of racially profiling him and not picking him up because he's Jewish. And I just want you, for audio only, just close your eyes and listen to this exchange. And on video, watch this exchange. This guy, Douglas Davis, I honestly will not be surprised if WWE legitimately drops this guy. I didn't like their music before. This guy is worse than a male Karen. This is disgusting, in my opinion. Here's the video. Now, the narration is somebody on Twitter. This is the only video I could find that was clear enough to the point, and it gives you a little bit of a synopsis. Check this out.
Please call.
I heard I heard you say under your breath they look Jewish.
What? What?
I heard you say.
Oh my God! You are sick.
I heard you say.
You're sick. You're sick.
When the driver started to drive away, the man provoked him more.
You are sick. Leave me alone. Sick. You're sick. Sick.
What's wrong with him?
You know what? I just realized. Hold on. That wasn't even from the beginning. Here's the beginning. You missed the best part. Here's the beginning.
Douglas J. Davis falsely accused an Uber driver of anti-Semitism because his family was too big for the car.
I heard you say under your breath they look Jewish.
What? What?
4 times Grammy Award winner booked an Uber black car for 4 instead of an SUV for 5 without child seats. And when the driver refused to transport them for safety reasons, the man immediately started playing victim.
I'm being
Please
harassed.
explain. You know what happened to CEO?
You're racially profiling us.
You're saying I racial profile you? You're 5 people. You book a black car,
Go inside.
and you tell that I
You're
racial
threatening me.
profile.
You're
Racial for what?
threatening me.
No, don't stay.
You're threatening me. I feel threatened.
For what?
You are threatening
You are
my
a
children.
cocksucker.
Say your children.
You are
And I don't
threatening
curse
my
You
like
said
that
that
on
you're
these shows.
lawyer.
I
You don't
am.
deserve
Stay
that,
you
children.
are for me.
Threatening- You got out of the car. You are the
Stay
aggressor. That's how the
I'm
law
closing
works.
the door.
You're the aggressor. You got out and chased me.
I'll make sure that
Fucking male
You
Karen,
do that.
man.
Big shot. Let's see how far
big
that
shot.
gets you.
5 people.
Let's see
over
how
black.
far it gets
Let's
you.
be honest.
You're the aggressor.
You try for what?
You're the aggressor.
Man, please call.
I heard
so
you say.
you.
I heard you say under your breath they look Jewish.
What? What?
I heard you say.
Oh
I
my
don't want
God!
to
You are
Jews.
sick.
I heard you say. I don't
You're
want to take-
sick. You're sick.
When the driver started to drive away, the man provoked him more.
You are sick. Leave me alone. Sick. You're.
If that doesn't piss you off, either you're a wrestler and this guy's produced your music, or you're just an asshole too. What a piece of shit. And you saw the little kids there, right? Could you imagine how many altercations this guy has gotten into in the past that were not recorded? You don't just wake up one day and start accusing people of being profiled because you didn't get your way. Listen, again, I write insurance for a living. I live in New York. I know how the Uber system works. I've insured people who do Uber for a living. I know exactly what happened here. This motherfucker either didn't want to pay the extra money for the SUV, or the other vehicles that were bigger were going to take longer. And because he's a male Karen and he thinks he's a CEO, that he decided, oh, I'll just get the car with 4 people and I'll squeeze everybody in. Fuck you. Fuck you. That pissed me off because that is a bad representation of people here in New York. I feel really, really bad for that driver. What an asshole. Do I think Tony Khan is an asshole? Man, I used to support this guy. I used to want to give him the benefit of the doubt. We started calling him a petulant child 3 years ago. It was March of 2021 when I called him Dixie Carter. Remember Dixie Carter, and I spelled it Kharter. Anybody remember Mr. McMahon? Anybody remember the Khan WO? I said a couple of years ago, And if you don't believe me, go check out the March 2021. I don't know if it's March 18th, but it was middle of March 2021's Raw post show. It's right there in the headlines. I compared Tony Khan from a couple of years ago when he was showing up on Impact Wrestling to Vince McMahon when he was doing Memphis in 1993. Let me repeat that, 1993. And why did I compare it to 1993? Because I said Vince McMahon in 1993 was starting to get a little bit of a feel of being an on-air personality character who was a heel. And I said it would take several years, but 1997, 4 years later, Vince McMahon obviously became Mr. McMahon, and the rest is history after the Montreal Screwjob. And I said Tony Khan, in a couple of years, will be an on-air character. He will either want to be like a Vince McMahon or an Eric Bischoff or a Dixie Carter. It's going to be one of those three. We kind of got a combination thereof on Wednesday's Dynamite. Now, number one, it's not an NWO because Jack Perry was already under contract, was suspended. The Young Bucks were already in the company. They're not outsiders from a different organization. So it's not the NWO. I love Eric Bischoff. I watch all his podcasts. I watch 83 Weeks. I watch what he did with Bully Ray. Don't flatter yourself that much, my friend. It was not the NWO. Just because it was three people and just because Tony Khan got his ass kicked does not make it Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan. None of them were outsiders. All right. This, if you want to kind of put a spin on this, this is more of like when the Dudleys attacks Dixie Carter. Tony Khan, let's make it clear. I know I said this 3 years ago. I got to say it again now. Tony Khan wants to be Vince McMahon. He wants to be Eric Bischoff. He wants to be Dixie Carter, only better. He wants to be looked at as the good Vince McMahon. He is obsessed with being in that authority figure. And on Wednesday, listen, I thought the way he played it was horrible. It was horrible. Seeing his father, and listen, people used to say I used to look like Mike Ditka because my hair used to be really pushed back. I said it looked like Mike Ditka. People said I used to look like that guy on LA Law, the fat guy that used to be he was disabled. All right. So that's not racist or anything, but, I'm sorry. Every time I look at Shad Khan, I feel like I'm looking at Saddam Hussein. He looks like Saddam Hussein. I'm sorry. If you look at Saddam Hussein's mustache and his hair, they look the same to me. By the way, that shirt that Shad Khan is wearing, it's actually a $135 shirt. It is legit. I actually posted a screenshot. If anybody's interested in buying that shirt, I will send you the store link. But Shad Khan showed up, showed concern for his son. Everybody around the ring showed concern for his son. Now, I tried to take Jack Perry's situation and turn it into chicken salad. I don't know if you paid very close attention this week. Did you take notice of all the legendary podcasters who are now saying, oh, they aired the footage, obviously, to get this over. Obviously, that footage was designed because of what happened on Wednesday. No, you kumquats. You said for weeks that it was in retaliation of the CM Punk stuff. I think we were the only show that said jackals, that this was being designed to set up Jack Perry, the Young Bucks, and that's exactly what I had. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's pretty obvious that they aired that footage to set this up. Yeah, you milked everybody's prostate for all the ad revenue, and now you're starting to change your tune a little bit. So now I have to stay one step ahead of the curve, and a lot of you are saying to me, okay, DT, where do you think this is going? The Young Bucks, Jack Perry hits Tony Khan in the stomach. The Young Bucks hit the Meltzer driver, and Tony Khan is knocked out. Okay. Before I tell you where I think this is going, I don't know if the people there have the balls enough when they practice this with Tony and said, Tony, You got to show more pain. You got to act hurt, not stand there and look like a clown. He got hit in the midsection and he's just like laid on bent over. And then when they had him upside down to do the Meltzer driver, first of all, he wore short socks and it looked goofy. But he's not even kicking his legs back and forth to try to fight it off. He's just standing there upside down and almost saying to Nick Jackson, hey, you want to blow me while you're holding me upside down? He literally was just standing there upside down, waiting for it. What was even worse, and I could show you this footage, was he was at the NFL draft wearing a neck brace. Now, I love the idea that he was wearing the neck brace because, yes, kayfabe is dead. But I have always said that I appreciated when Matt Cardona got pushed off the rampway in the storyline, I think it was with Kane and was it Eve Torres or whatever it was, and Zack Ryder was going around the indie circuit with a neck brace on. Shawn Michaels, when he was in the storyline with JBL and got blinded, I actually was involved in an autograph signing, and Shawn Michaels was there wearing a goddamn eye patch. Wearing an eye patch. I appreciate even LA Knight. Didn't LA Knight wear an eye patch recently? Jon Moxley. Moxley did its eye injury storyline and went around places wearing the eye patch. I appreciate when a wrestler takes their shit seriously. Not like that time with the Bellas, where we're watching on Raw and Nikki is saying to Brie, stop it. You should have died in a womb. Oh, Nikki, don't say that. 3 goddamn days later, they're in a California restaurant together. Hey, Brie. Hey, Nikki, can we take pictures of you? Oh, sure. This side of my face. You're in the middle of this heated storyline on TV. You should have died in the womb. And they're taking pictures, posing together. Lana and Rusev, as much as I'm a fan of Miro, they're doing this storyline on TV where Miro and Lana are not getting along in the WWE, and they think Dolph Ziggler was involved at the time, and they go on TMZ, look, everybody, we got engaged. Show some effort. Tony Khan wears the neck brace. And you can't teach smart. I'm starting to wonder if maybe how they got some of this money was some malpractice suit when this guy was born, or maybe when he was a baby. Maybe something went wrong and they won like a 7-digit, 8-digit, lawsuit because this guy is too fucking stupid. He's too stupid to have this kind of money. And I'm not envious of it. I'd rather have very little money and be smart, educated, be able to like have common sense than to have all this money in the world and basically show everyone that I've been coddled since I was in diapers. Kevin and I have been joking for the last couple of weeks that when we were young, we got hit with the strap. We got hit with a ruler. When Tony Khan was young, no PlayStation for you. No sushi tonight for you. No, you go to your room and you keep the air conditioned no bigger than 71. This is what this motherfucker was shielded with. This guy, lifelong wrestling fan, wears a neck brace at the NFL draft. And for those on video, you're the only ones that could see this. I want you to look at people at home watching Tony Khan on the screen as they're about to draft their pick for the Jaguars. Now, remember, this guy's wearing a neck brace. Now, this ain't getting back to Tony Khan, but Tony, you happen to be seeing this? I'm going to tell you how you could fix this very, very easily. May not be good, but there's a very easy fix to this. Look at this video.
Khan's in a fucking neck brace during the NFL draft. I'm sure this isn't
Motherfucker's turning his neck
at all.
Look, do you see that? Everybody's laughing. Look at the guy in the middle laughing at him. Look at the person. Look at Tony Khan again. This guy's wearing a neck brace. Ow, my neck. Look how he's turning his neck around.
Well, there it is. Tony Khan's in a fucking neck brace during the NFL draft. I'm sure this isn't a distraction for the Jaguars at all.
How do you fix this? We didn't even talk about the Harvey Weinstein comment yet. How do you fix this? Tony Khan has to be heel. Tony Khan has to reveal that him, the Young Bucks, and Jack Perry was a setup, that he really didn't get his neck injured. They might even play back the slow motion of the Meltzer driver where he didn't even get hurt. Tony Khan, if they really want to go one step further, he had something underneath his shirt that he didn't really get hurt from Jack Perry. That's the only way you could fix this. That Tony Khan reveals down the line that it was all a setup, that he really didn't get hurt, and this was a setup. Now, where do I think this is going besides that? If I was AEW, there is only one way to go. Can you figure it out? Can you figure it out? It has to be the... Oh, really? Could you give me my phone? Yeah. Somebody just rang my house phone. 11:30 at night. That's not good. My family, my wife is here, so my family would be the only reason to be calling me at night. I don't think anybody called my house and said, your audio wasn't working at 10 o'clock.
I thought it was between your...
Hang on a second, everyone. I hope there's nothing wrong. I have no idea. I don't even know this number. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Real life has to come in, get in the way sometimes. Nobody calls my house at 11:30 at night. Kev would call me for some reason, but nobody calls my house this late unless something is wrong. And this number I do not recognize, and I'm not going to reveal it. So I just dropped the phone cover. I'm not going to pick it up. Yes, I will. So, this is only leads to one direction, the return of MJF. Tony Khan could do one of two things. Tony Khan could claim that he is trying to get MJF back to counter what is going on with Jack Perry and the Young Bucks. And then you could do one of two things. Tony Khan could be the reason to get MJF back in AEW to feud with them, or Tony Khan could get MJF back and then sets up MJF and then still turns heel. I think that's the only way they could go with this. Listen, I want to make this clear. I'm not saying this is going to be good or it's not. I'm just trying to make logic out of this. It's very easy for anybody out there to say, oh, it was fucking awful. You're an embarrassment. This is the worst thing I ever saw. What the fuck is wrong with you? Yeah, anybody could do that. That doesn't involve too many brain cells to do that. I'm trying to think one step ahead and say, okay, why are they doing this? When they aired the footage of Jack Perry and CM Punk, who was the only show that said they're doing it to clear up any confusion about what CM Punk actually did to Jack Perry? That this was designed to set up the return of Jack Perry. That we were the only people calling that. Everybody else was saying, oh, CM Punk, every whole one. He said, no, the pay-per-view was coming up, and this was all designed to happen on that specific time frame. So I think this is all leading to an MJF return. Now, does Tony Khan have it in him to be a full character on TV? In my opinion, from what I've seen so far, Tony Khan would be more like Dixie Carter than Eric Bischoff or Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon was a pretty good fucking heel in 1997. When Eric Bischoff turned heel and joined up with the NWO, it actually was pretty good at that time. It ended up jumping the shark. I mean, when he was in the ring with the motorcycle that time, it's good to be king that he jumped the shark. He jumped the shark with his motorcycle. It was awful. By then, it was done. But at the vibe I'm getting right now, if Tony Khan turns heel, it's going to give me Dixie Carter vibes, period. Nothing different. Maybe he could do it. Maybe he thinks he could do it. Hopefully, some people behind the scenes have the balls to tell him, Tony, I don't think it's a good idea. Tony, I love you, but I don't think this is going to work. Tony, I got to be honest with you. I mean, somebody's got to have the balls to tell him. If people are just yesing him, they're setting. Listen, and we're going to lead to the audio now of what Tony Khan said on the NFL Network today. He was on the NFL Network wearing a neck brace. And they asked him what happened. And he's putting over Dynamite like he always does. And as he's putting over Dynamite, if you look at the commentators, they're kind of laughing at him. But, hey, he's a powerful guy. He's a billionaire. And, they're going to obviously take him seriously. So then Tony Khan gets in this big rant about AEW. Now, keep in mind, this is the NFL draft. This is about the Jacksonville Jaguars. And 90% of what he was talking about was about AEW. So he starts this rant about AEW, and then he brings up WWE. And I want you to hear the part about WWE, because this is what's getting all of the buzz today. Listen to this closely.
AEW, we've been doing this for 5 years. We are the most successful sports startup since the AFL. Pre-merger. There has not been a challenger brand that has gained as much market share as AEW in many, many, many years. We are like the Pepsi of pro wrestling, and we're up against a really evil juggernaut. WWE is our competitor. That's who we're facing. AEW, like the Pepsi of pro wrestling. WWE's like the Harvey Weinstein of pro wrestling. And I'm really proud of what we do down here.
All right, Tony. All right, Tony. Hold on, real quick.
Did you hear how they were cutting him off at the end? This mentally deficient moron calls WWE the Harvey Weinstein of wrestling. What is it with males with facial hair that don't get pussy or penis? What is it with hairy, single men that like to call Harvey Weinstein? I mean, did they have some personal issue that they're just not telling anyone? Because not too long ago, it was Nick Hausman that compared Jericho to Harvey Weinstein. I can't use the R word on YouTube. It rhymes with grape. But Harvey Weinstein did acts that some people think he should be killed over. And Nick Hausman, just throwing off the mouth that Jericho's like Harvey Weinstein. Vince McMahon this is my problem. And honestly, I think it's to the point now that Tony Khan, I think he's mentally retarded. I think there's something seriously, and I'm not laughing here. I think there's something mentally wrong with him. And it can't just be shielded in like a Richie Rich environment since he was a child. Billionaires, people of power, 40-year-olds don't talk stupid like this. And here's the worst part about it. Vince McMahon is no longer involved in the WWE. He wants to take it to his grave. He needs Vince to still be part of WWE. Just like a lot of people online with their tribalism need to associate the past with to now. No, this is TKO Group Holdings, WWE. This is Endeavor. This is other owners. This is not Vince McMahon and the McMahon family owning it, but they will continue to act like TKO Group Holdings never bought WWE. Those people on the NFL Network, he brought up a sexual predator, a criminal, and putting WWE's not even a human being. It's a company. And he compares it to a sexual predator. Even those commentators like, all right, Tony, all right, we got to move on. What is wrong with this motherfucker? And I'm going to start calling out, what is wrong with Shad Khan? How do you not grab your son by the hair, by that Brillo pad fucking head, and throw him against the wall and saying, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you comparing WWE, to a sexual predator? Nick Houseman, all right, he said it. Stupid. Hopefully he learned from it. We're talking about the owner of AEW, involved with the Jaguars, involved with other business organizations, a corporate person, and just throwing this off. AEW is not the Pepsi of wrestling. It's becoming the Crystal Pepsi of wrestling. And yeah, I have to be honest, as soon as I wrote that, I saw a bunch of you out there go and tweet it like, oh, and people like, oh, that was a good one. Yeah. I said it first because I'm old enough to remember Crystal Pepsi. There's something legitimately wrong with this guy. There's something legitimately wrong with this guy. And I got to be honest with you. I want to watch AEW. I want to be supportive of it. I want to be, it's just, I see this and, I see the wrestlers in that company like, hey, it's Tony's company. He could say what he wants. He could do what he wants. Or, you see like, I don't want to single anybody out, but you know who I'm talking about. Oh, I love AEW. They create jobs. If it wasn't for AEW, all of us would not be working right now. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of it, and there's something legitimately wrong with this guy. This AEW did, let me tell you how bad it's gotten. AEW did 684,000 viewers with Okada, with Ospreay, with Mercedes Moné. They're now NXT levels. And I remember making this thumbnail originally. And when Mercedes debuted and it was 801,000 viewers, people were like, oh, well, they didn't really advertise Mercedes. That even though it was big business and Boston was spelled with $2 for 3 weeks, oh, they really didn't announce us, so we really didn't know. The rating has never been higher since her debut. It's been lower and lower and lower and lower. And this past Wednesday was 683,000. Immediately, Dave Meltzer says, oh, West Coast, the different programming, 8% lower. What the fuck you talking about? Even if you add 8% to that, that's 720,000 people. That is still horrendous. They were advertising all this shit. And forget about Jack Perry and forget about the Young Bucks and forget about Tony Khan for a minute. Look at everybody else on the goddamn card, from Moxley to Danielson to Ospreay to Fletcher and it's getting lower and lower and lower. And this is the dagger of this week. And anybody, I don't ever tell you to do this, but I will tell you for this week, anybody that brought it up, you should just laugh at them. Just put one of those LMFAO emojis. Or steal my Tony Khan clown emoji that our channel members can use over here. Just save it and put it elsewhere. Because thank you to Mikey for sending me this again. This is the quarter-hour breakdown from this past Wednesday's Dynamite. And do you know the biggest excuse that the AEW whack jobs out there are putting out there? Oh, the Big Bang lead-in wasn't as strong this week. The Big Bang lead-in this week was 792,000 viewers. The week before, it was 917. If you go even further there, it was 981. So now the excuse is, well, the Big Bang lead-in was only 792. That shows you this is why AEW is in the position that it's in. All of those journalists out there and all of those influencers with big followings that called Mercedes Moné a game changer and say, oh, they're doing just everything that this Osprey, game changer, Okada, greatest wrestler of today, and everything is cake and ice cream. And remember this reject. Remember this reject that I'll keep showing everyone. This winner, Ella Bennett, who wrote this, 2 months ago? Not even. March 25th, that was. These are the people that are killing AEW, not Tony Khan. These are the people killing AEW because there's enough people out there, the people that Tony Khan pay attention to, that are making them feel like, oh, it's just trollers, it's just haters. It's just Cornette and Bischoff and Russo and everybody else just getting through to those people and they're hurting your company. No, all these people that are over the top, that don't have the balls to tell you that what is happening is just god-awful. The people out there that have to factor in the Big Bang lead-in, that have to have an overrun. I told you, it's like me if I'm 270 pounds and I become 280 pounds. And then I become 290 pounds. And then I go on the scale and I take the scale and I kind of turn the dial, a little bit to the left. And I don't drink water this morning. And maybe I sweated a little bit. And then, maybe I took some X-Lax and had some diarrhea. And then I go on the scale like, look, everybody, I dropped 7 pounds. Wow, you're doing a great job. Keep at it. But meanwhile, those people knew that I didn't drink water that morning, that I took X-Lax to ship my brains out, to drop a little bit extra weight. I moved the scale back just a little bit to influence my weight a little bit. Now they need the Big Bang lead-in to be strong to justify the numbers. All of these people out there are killing this company. And Tony Khan, what he's doing, one day, some of these people will have the balls to call it like they see it. They did it about Dixie Carter. They will do it towards Tony Khan. Dixie Carter never, and I honestly felt bad for Dixie. Many, many years we ripped Dixie Carter when she was still around. And then she was gone. And she always thought that she was the ant, that there were wrestlers in TNA, that it wasn't just about their contracts. It was about a movement. It was about being the alternative to WWE, that it was a family there and people cared a little bit more. And then when some wrestlers left and immediately wrote off TNA as like, oh, now I'm in the real time, the big time, or later on criticizing her, she was very, very devastated by it. A lot of people may not know that. If you pay attention to some people's interviews who were very, very intimate at the situation that time, she was devastated that some of the people that she really thought were extended family, that cared that much about TNA, that it wasn't just strictly contract, she now found out that it was strictly business. Strictly business. And one day that's going to happen to Tony Khan. Tony Khan thinks now that everybody's his buddy. Some of them are his smoking buddies. Some of them are, Tony creates jobs and, I don't want AEW to close down. Absolutely not. I want it to get better. But all of these people that are coddling this and blaming it on West Coast ratings and blaming it on this and, just not even being embarrassed. This guy calling the WWE a predator, a sexual predator, especially with Vince gone. That is disturbing. It is disgusting. Scorpio 1117, thank you for the 2 spices. No wonder Jade Cargill left AEW. Jade Cargill left AEW because of opportunity. She wasn't growing there. The roster wasn't there to grow. That's why she left. She didn't leave because of this clown stuff going on. Look at everybody else who's still there that have not left. Has anybody ever picked up and left because of this? Some people may think Cody, CM Punk obviously quit, but, look at everybody who is still there that make excuses for all of this. Tony Khan is a reflection of a nice part of our society. That foundation in AEW has been flawed since day one. They wanted to go in this direction. Cody wanted to go in this direction, and they just went in a totally different direction. And CM Punk was the best shot at being the voice of the voiceless there. Because for every person that hated CM Punk, that didn't like him in that company, that wanted him out, there was somebody else in that company that can't speak up, that need a job, that this might be their best shot at making good money, that they have a family, they have bills to pay, they have responsibilities, and they're forced to silence because they don't want to jeopardize. Yeah, you could go on social media, you could call things out, you could be that person, that you're an internet hero. Wow, props. The closest maybe would have been Malachi Black when he sat in his car that time and he said he didn't appreciate people within AEW leaking out about his mental health. That, I think, might have been the closest. And that was shut up almost immediately. You look at the Miro stuff. Miro is fucking making coin and doing next to nothing, even when he wasn't injured. That motherfucker is the smartest man around. But you look at everybody else there that absolutely need their job and have to keep quiet about it. If somebody speaks up, and a whole big part of the internet and Cornette and Russo and Bischoff and me and everyone else is like, man, props to you, you speaking up. And yeah, you finally, are we going to pay that person's unemployment? Are we going to replace their salary that they're no longer making in AEW? There's a lot of people forced to silence. CM Punk truly was the voice of the voiceless within AEW. And with him gone now, you either go along with it and get paid and deal with the Looney Tunes, or you go find something else to do. Try to make it on the indie circuit. There's a lot of people there that are not WWE material. And AEW is their biggest shot. So, all right. Let me get into a couple of super shout-outs. We'll get into Vince, and then we'll start wrapping it up. Doge is saying, can I copy the Paul Ellering's face from the draft list, Pete, please? You mean as far as making an emoji? I could do that. I could make an emoji. I think I have a couple extra spots. I can't do it now live on the show. But what was wrong with his face? Let's go check it out. Oh, yeah. Look at, you see him next to Vinci? Second row near the right. Look at that face. Look at that face. He's got that face. Let's see what it could be like. Honey, I didn't drink today. Like he's got that look like, yeah, okay. He's got that funny look on his face. I like Paul Ellering, but he's just not intimidating in the Final Testament. I said, listen, he's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer, but I still don't understand why he's in the Final Testament. He doesn't come across as someone who's guiding all these people. He comes across as like a bonsai tree. I think I said that before. Bonsai trees could be like 70 years old and they look cool, but honestly, they're like small and they don't really serve much purpose. That's kind of like what Paul Ellering is. He's a bonsai tree. Loved his work with the Legion of Doom, but he's a bonsai tree. Dream 101. Hey, DT, do you ever get my email? New Patreon member. If you send me a DM, I will check out DMs tonight. If you emailed me, I haven't checked my email in months. But if you're a patron, DM me on Patreon. And welcome. I hope you enjoy it, man. There's 7 years of shows there. There's like hundreds of shows. There's like thousands of hours of content there that's never been made public, plus everything else. So, but send me a DM on Patreon. By the way, Tony Baloney McCall, I sent you your prize for the WrestleMania predictions. I did yours today. Yours was a little late because I got your PayPal address DM'd on Twitter, but I did it today. So, Sticky Fingers. Yes, we talked about the Dominik injury. I also talked about the WWE draft sucking. And I think that is it with the super shout outs. Yes, that is it. So let's briefly talk about Vince. because a lot of places didn't tell you the full story. I'm not giving Vince a pass. Vince McMahon is a pig. Vince McMahon has used his money and his power to get things and maybe pressure people. Has taken advantage of people, no question. I don't know if any of it's criminal. The Rita Chatterton thing, we'll never know the truth. My gut feeling after all these years makes me believe that, something happened, that she was not a willing participant completely, maybe more manipulated and promised things and did not get that. And maybe she felt that, I don't know. I don't know. I think of the tanning salon incident in Florida that we covered many years ago, Kev and I. Think about the incident in California. I think about the incident with, we're not supposed to say Christy Hemi's name, but you remember right before the Saudi Arabia deal. You know what I'm talking about. So I don't know what the truth is with Janel Grant. But, in January, we did a dive into Janel Grant's lawsuit. She accused Vince of criminal activity. Trafficking is fucking crazy shit. And even if you didn't pay much attention to it, you probably paid attention to P. Diddy's situation. FBI is looking at Vince's stuff. The FBI has not closed their case. Just because you don't read it outside of wrestling websites doesn't mean that it's not a big deal. Look at the Nick Khan stock situation. Whole bunch of people are stirring up shit with Nick Khan right now saying, oh, he put all his WWE shares up for stock. Is he leaving? Vince put all his shares up too. Are they going to leave? And is he going to leave and form a company with Vince? Do a Google news search. And then you realize that 99% of the websites reporting that are wrestling sites. When you see non-wrestling finance sites, the stock market, investor sites talking about it, then take it as a news story. When WrestlingVirgin.com is the main person talking about it, probably the wrestling world is making a big deal out of this, and this might just be normal business. Maybe Nick Khan thinks that the stock right now is peaking. So don't read too much into it unless the business world starts talking about it. So now the Vince stuff. I don't know what Vince did and he didn't do. But if you remember that lawsuit, it took us 3 hours to read it. Janel Grant's lawyer, Janel Grant, showed screenshots of Vince McMahon's conversations. She got very, very raw and very personal. Now, I am not defending Vince here, but I will call things like I see it. And I'm going to bring up a few things now that whether you like Vince or you despise Vince, you have to admit that Vince's response, he did nothing wrong. And this lawyer that's representing Janel Grant has a really big problem on her hands, a big fucking problem on her hands, because Vince McMahon is a billionaire. And Vince McMahon is going to pay lawyers 5 digits an hour to take this and turn it into Swiss cheese, put tons of holes in it. And Janel Grant's lawyer is getting paid based on a percentage of whatever's awarded in court. So if this gets thrown out in court, she gets a big goose egg. Vince wants to move this to arbitration because it's a violation of a contract. So Vince has a legitimate gripe and a reason to want to push this to arbitration. The lawyer don't want that. The lawyer, let me put it this way. When I read you the lawyer's response, you realize she is not in the same league as Vince's lawyers. And that's not pro-Vince and that's not defending Vince, but oof, wait till you see what I share you. If you saw my thumbnail for this show, you see Vince's condo, and then 4 floors below is Janel Grant's condo. I want you to remember that screenshot when we get into a few things, because Vince McMahon has finally made a response in court to these accusations. Now, I have the court documents. For those on video, you're more than welcome to look at your screen. We're not going to get into every little detail, but we're going to get into a few things that are very, very important. There is one thing that I think may contradict a little bit what Vince is saying, but I want to share with you Vince's response. And when you start seeing this, you got to start thinking to yourself, is this a eyes wide shut situation? Remember when we had that conversation, I think it was the end of January, Kevin and I had that conversation too, that Vince may have just found himself a freak and had this wild sexual stuff, eyes wide shut, Caligula. You know, believe it or not, guys, there are people out there that absolutely are into wild fetishes, that do like to get gangbanged. I'm not saying Janel Grant, all I'm saying is that as bizarre as this all sounds, it's not as bizarre in certain worlds for certain people. And understand too, you know, in the world of millionaires and billionaires, that is not all world. You know, I always brought up like a Lifetime movie or a BET movie, or, you know, one of these movies where you see like billionaires and millionaires, they're all at like a mansion and they're having these big parties, and there'll be a guy 94 years old, and you'll see like, you know, what was the woman that passed away, that had the overdose, blonde woman who was married to a 90-something-year-old woman. And everybody's like, no, they really love each other. And she's like, yeah, I really love him. And even the fucking 95-year-old, Anna Nicole Smith, I remembered. Does anybody honestly think Anna Nicole Smith was into 90-year-old penis? You know, into 90-year-old relationships? Or is it possible that maybe she married him because he was a multimillionaire? I don't know. I didn't know him personally. But there's a lot of people out there that are into millionaires and billionaires. I brought up recently the Trevor Bauer situation. I'm sure a lot of you in the baseball world know what happened to Trevor Bauer and the woman that accused him of some criminal activity, and now she's arrested and facing many years in jail for lying. So when Janel Grant does a 70-page lawsuit and makes accusations of Vince pooping on her head and, you know, forcing her, a 42-year-old woman, forcing her to write a love letter and this and that, Vince made a response. And I'm going to share it with you. And I'm going to just read some, I think, important points. And this is what Vince said. By publicly filing her salacious, false, and defamatory complaint, and we're not going to use plaintiff and defendant. It's kind of, plaintiff is Janel Grant, defendant is Vince. So I'm going to replace plaintiff with Janel Grant and defendant with Vince McMahon. It's just easier to read and understand. By publicly filing her salacious, false, and defamatory complaint, Janel Grant is brazenly and intentionally violated a binding contract to arbitrate. The complaint's outrageous claims of sexual abuse and coercion are purely fiction, plainly intended to garner publicity, and are flatly contradicted by Janel Grant's own statements. Contrary to Janel Grant's false allegations, Vince McMahon and Janel Grant engaged in a consensual relationship during which Vince McMahon never coerced Janel Grant into anything, doing anything, and never mistreated in any way. In fact, a love letter Janel Grant wrote to Vince McMahon shortly before the parties ended their relationship. Janel Grant described Vince as my best friend, my love, and my everything, praising him for being the wonderful, tender, vulnerable, heart on your sleeve soul you really are. It is incredulous that Janel Grant, a then 42-year-old woman who claims on her resume to have a law degree at Pace University, would have written those words to Vince McMahon months after all of the events in the complaint of alleged abuse, coercion, and sex trafficking. At the time Janel Grant and Vince McMahon met in 2019, Janel Grant was not dealing with profound grief from her parents' deaths and struggling financially, as described in her complaint. She explained in her complaint that she devoted years of around-the-clock caregiving to her parents. Those statements are false. Based on a foreclosure action against Janel Grant and her parents, Janel Grant's father passed away on April 18th, 2017, 2 years before Janel Grant and Vince McMahon met. And at the time of his death, Janel Grant's father's marital status was recorded as widowed, which means that Janel Grant's mother died even earlier. So we go a little further. Court records, you got to admit, some of this is kind of damaging. Court records show that contrary to her claim of around-the-clock caregiving to her father, Janel Grant's father was living in a senior nursing home before he passed away and not living with Janel Grant. And Janel Grant's neighbor would bring Janel Grant's mother dinner and help around the house before she passed away. In fact, contrary to her story, around-the-clock devotion in the complaint, the foreclosure reveals that Janel Grant did not want to be associated with, quote, any of this, and failed to respond to numerous requests of the foreclosure. Indeed, Janel Grant was so absent in her parents' lives that it took substantial time and significant effort for the creditor in the action to even locate her and her identity as her parents' next of kin. In addition to falsehoods about her own background, Janel Grant's complaint is further riddled with fabrications and omissions about her relationship with Vince McMahon. During their consensual relationship, this is pretty wild, guys, Vince McMahon and Janel Grant knew that the other was involved in romantic relationships. Janel Grant was living in Park Tower, a luxury multi-million-dollar building in Stamford, Connecticut, along with her longtime fiance, Brian Goncalves. Now, before I read any further, guys, I want to give you a brief synopsis of what I'm about to say. What we find out is that Janel Grant was living in a multi-million-dollar condo with her fiance when she met Vince. Vince lived in the same building as her. She would leave her fiance's apartment, get in an elevator, go 4 floors up to sleep with Vince, and then hop on the elevator and go back to her fiance's condo. Later in this, you will also hear that when Janel Grant broke up with her fiance, that supposedly the fiance let her stay for 2 years by herself in his multi-million-dollar condo so she could get back on her feet. That's what her lawyer claims. All right. So you realize she had no job. She wasn't paying any rent. She was living in somebody's multi-million-dollar condo. So listen, this is not a Janel Grant bashing. This is not pro Vince. All I'm saying is that as I read this, it kind of paints a little bit of a different picture, and there are some points that are very valid here. What I do find interesting is that John Laurinaitis is not mentioned at all. So I'm really curious to see what John Laurinaitis' response is to this. But let's get back to the rest of this complaint, or the response, I should say. Janel Grant was living in Park Tower, a luxury multi-million-dollar building in Stamford, Connecticut, with her longtime fiance and attorney, Brian Goncalves. Since August of 2022, Goncalves has served as senior vice president and chief privacy officer of Televisa, and Goncalves previously held positions with MasterCard and Hewlett-Packard. Janel Grant and Goncalves lived in the same luxury building as Vince McMahon, just 4 floors below, when they began their love affair in 2019. Janel Grant would often visit Vince McMahon at his condo at all hours of the night, including 2:30 a.m., to pursue their affair and then return back to her condo with Goncalves the same night. It is nonsensical that the disturbing alleged acts in the complaint, including violence, coerced sex, and forcing the plaintiff, Vince McMahon, to be defecated on, forcing Janel Grant to be defecated on, were taking place. Okay, what he's saying is that it's ridiculous to think that the complaint, including violence, coerced sex, and forcing Janel Grant to be crapped on before Janel Grant returned to her lawyer fiance 4 floors down without incident. Janel Grant was never contacted by Goncalves, anyone in the building, the police, any friends of Janel Grant, any lawyer, any advocate for Janel Grant, at any time about this fictitious, extensive, years-long abuse behavior alleged in the complaint. So now we get to an interesting part, and I want to make this clear. I don't think he means Linda McMahon. I don't think he means Linda McMahon. This is very interesting that nobody brought up online. After 3 years and having decided to return to their partners in January 2022, Janel Grant and Vince McMahon agreed to end their consensual affair and separate from each other, with Janel Grant leaving the company where they worked, WWE. Janel Grant and Vince McMahon entered into a binding contract to memorialize the agreement entitled Confidential Settlement Agreement, General Release, and Covenant Not to Sue, NDA. Plaintiff Janel Grant initially wanted to include a term in the contract mandating that Vince McMahon could not move out of the building that they shared. But Janel Grant refused to include that term. Vince McMahon refused to include that term and moved out. So, if Vince McMahon has proof, this lawsuit's done. Vince McMahon is claiming that Janel Grant wanted a clause in the agreement that Vince does not move out of that condo. And Vince said no, and Vince moved out. Now, when this says that they went back to their respective partners, Janel Grant went back to her fiance. I don't know if she ever left him. Vince went back to whoever he was going with. I don't think it's Linda McMahon. Because if that's true, Vince went back to Linda McMahon in 2022. And as far as we know, that is not true. So Vince apparently was in another relationship also. All right, so let's get back to that part of the agreement. And this is very important, guys, because if Vince has anything to back this up, this is done. Let's be honest. I know everybody wants to sensationalize it to get extra views and attention, but if he's got something where she emailed him or texted him and says, look, I'll agree to this, but I don't want you to move out of the building, and Vince, has that proof after all of this, all right. Janel Grant initially wanted to include a term in the contract mandating that Vince McMahon cannot move out of their shared building, but Vince McMahon refused to include that and did move out. Janel Grant's contention that the contract between Vince McMahon and the WWE on the one hand and Janel Grant on the other is not enforceable and is utterly meritless, but that is an issue for the arbitrator. In fact, because the parties wish to preserve the confidential and private nature of any disputes under the agreement, they specifically provided in the agreement that disputes would be resolved through arbitration. Janel Grant was represented by a lawyer who negotiated the agreement for her before she executed it. All right, let's stop there. Apparently, in this NDA, there was an agreement in there that if there's any issues, it's got to be arbitrated. So Vince McMahon is trying to get the court to throw out this lawsuit or move it to arbitration, mediation. And in this response, it's revealed that Janel Grant is being represented by a lawyer who originally set up the NDA. So her lawyer was involved with the NDA. That's fascinating stuff, guys. When Vince McMahon learned that Janel Grant, despite her promises, had violated the agreement by wrongfully disclosing both the existence of the agreement and their relationship. He exercised his contractual right to withhold future payments under the agreement. In response, Janel Grant sought to harm him. She intentionally violated the enforceable contract with her salacious, false, and defamatory public filing. However, the FAA and binding United States Supreme Court precedent and plaintiff's own agreement require that if Janel Grant wishes to proceed with her fictitious claims, she must do so in arbitration, not in this court, and that this action be stayed pending arbitration. As this is a pre-answer motion, Vince McMahon does not specifically address the substantive merits of Janel Grant's counts asserted against him. For the avoidance of doubt, however, Vince McMahon vehemently and categorically denies all allegations of wrongdoing in the complaint, including Janel Grant's outrageous claims that Vince McMahon coerced her into unwanted sexual acts, sexually assaulted, battery, trafficking, and defecating. Those are false statements intended for publicity. When the complaints allegations are adjudicated in the proper form, which should be arbitration, witnesses are called to testify under oath in all communications between the parties, including those authored by Janel Grant, which she substantially did not share in a complaint, are produced. Let's stop there. All of you that tuned in to my episode where I read this lawsuit, what did we say? It's interesting how the therapist's name was not mentioned. It's interesting how the officers' names were not mentioned. It's interesting how other people that were in Vince's inner circle that also were involved in sexual acts. Remember, she said it was more than just John Laurinaitis and Vince McMahon. There were other people. There was a doctor or a psychiatrist. There was none of those people are named. And what Vince is saying in here is that they will have to testify under oath, and those names will be made public. And he says she intentionally did not share the names in her complaint, that they're going to be produced and the allegations and claims will be disproven, and Janel Grant will be exposed for the liar that she is. Now, as you go on, there's background about Janel Grant. So I did not know this. She was featured in a movie called The Theory of Everything as a hospital receptionist. So if you want to Google, if the movie is online, The Theory of Everything, a movie that came out in 2006, she apparently is in it as a hospital receptionist. So there's a bunch of other information. It shows what the payments were supposed to be also, $500,000 a year for 4 more years. And Vince stopped the payments because of this going public. Now, before I read you the lawyer's response, then you'll understand why this is a big deal. Do you remember the investigation of Vince by WWE? Remember when it was uncovered that he paid out like $14 million, whatever the amount was. If you remember, I think it was at the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, might have been the Wall Street Journal, leaked out some information. And I remember it was Brad Shepard, that other piece of shit, who put out the wrong person. You know, when Janel Grant's name was mentioned and he found the wrong person and posted the wrong person, all that started coming out. And this lawsuit was not filed. That's when Vince said, that's it. I'm not giving you no more money. You violated this agreement. And instead of going to arbitration, the lawyer that she's involved in that helped set up the arbitration or the NDA is now trying to go after him in this court. And, you know, he claimed publicity. So now you have a gist of what he is claiming. He's claiming that in 2019, Janel Grant's parents were deceased over 2 years. Listen, you still mourn. I'm not questioning her grief, mourning her parents. I still cry to this day for my dog, and my dog was passed away 11 years ago. I have close friends that have died over the last bunch of years, and I still get choked up. I can only imagine how much harder it is to lose parents. Now, I'm not questioning that, but we were under the impression in his lawsuit they had just died, and she was in massive financial peril, and she needed something to work. And somebody told her, "Why don't you talk to Vince?" You know, we did not know that they lived in the same building. We did not know that she was living with her fiance. We did not know that the meetings in the condos, we thought that they were meeting in Florida and they were going to the office, and they were having this love affair. And then he got her a job in WWE. And what we also find out is that she was living there for nothing with her fiance. And then the lawyer says this. And look, maybe it's different in Connecticut. Maybe Janel Grant is such a sweetheart that an ex-boyfriend would do that for her. I don't know anybody alive that would break up with a fiance, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then let them live in their multi-million-dollar building for 2 years for nothing to help them get back on their feet. Like, that's just bizarre. I can see if it's a wife or a husband, or if you got kids and you don't want to, put them in peril. But a relationship, a boyfriend, girlfriend, and you break up and you say, live in my place. I'll pay it next 2 years. You don't even have to work. You just sit at home all day, watch TV. I just don't buy that. I don't buy it. So anyway, this is the lawyer's response. She had two. Instead of using his motion in the appropriate manner to raise legal arguments concerning whether this dispute must be submitted to arbitration, Vince McMahon used this motion's preliminary statement as a platform to launch vicious falsehoods, attacking Janel Grant's moral character in a transparent attempt to harass and intimidate her into submission. McMahon's easily refuted lies have no place in this case. It was not necessary, reasonable, or responsible to use a public filing to impugn Janel Grant's moral character. Indeed, Vince McMahon's desperate attempt to distract from the legal substance of the motion highlights his weakness and the weakness of his overall case. You know what my problem is with that? That lawsuit does nothing but demean him. He is no longer in WWE. He was forced out of TKO. It does nothing but accuse him of wild shit. And she's basically saying that he had no right to respond and to try to discredit Janel Grant. But the whole lawsuit does nothing but discredit him. Again, I'm not defending him and I'm not sticking up for him. I don't know what happened and what didn't happen. But that's the best you can do? That's the best you could do? He's trying to intimidate and force her into submission. It's kind of laughable. And then she said this, and this just goes to show you they're not in the same league as Vince McMahon's attorneys. Vince McMahon has never known a storyline that he doesn't twist to fit his own shameful narrative. Her father was in-home hospice during his final days, where Janel continued to care for him around the clock. Prior to his death, she had been caring for her blind, wheelchair-bound mother. Using the grief of someone who lost both their parents as an all-new level of disgusting. She was not dating at the time. Her ex-boyfriend allowed her to stay in the apartment as she rebuilt her life and resumed post-taking care of her parents. She had no job and no other financial support to lean back on. You know that Concalves is going to be forced to testify in court. So that is the response. And again, you hear that argument back, it certainly seems like, there's a lot more to this story, and we're only touched the surface. If Janel Grant has all those text messages, Vince probably has some as well. John Laurinaitis probably has some as well. And, you remember the love letter that came out a couple of weeks ago? And the lawyer's only response was that Janel Grant was forced to type that letter, was forced and manipulated to type that letter. We're not talking about a 19-year-old girl. We're not talking about somebody who was on crack and homeless that, you could manipulate them into doing anything. This was at that time, a 42-year-old woman who graduated law in Pace University, got a law degree, that was a pretty smart cookie, and was devastated about her parents passing away 2+ years earlier, living in a condo that we're now supposed to believe was there for 3 years and rent-free, no work, and Vince found an opportunity and took advantage of her. If you wrote that as a movie, I would think it would be 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It just seems a little bit too one-sided. I honestly think what happened was that Vince found a freak and showered her with money and gifts and made her feel that she was wanted and made her feel loved and made her feel desirable and made her feel irresistible. And again, you look at movies like Eyes Wide Shut, and you see some of these whacked out movies on Cinemax back in the day, late at night. There's tons of movies like that out there. It's not so far-fetched to think that, this is, again, that world of the millionaires and billionaires and the weird sexual perversions out there. That's what it kind of feels like to me. I don't know, but I try to look at it in an honest point of view. And I do believe Vince took advantage. Absolutely. I think most people that are accused, when they have 7, 8 digits in their income, I think it's a little too coincidental that they're all, listen, if you said to me, DT, say one good thing about Tony Khan, would be honestly the first thing I would say, not that he looks like a harmless little, hairy stuffed animal. I would say props to that guy who has that much money and has never been accused of taking advantage of women, men, abuse, using his money, to kind of get laid, Listen, there's all different types of manipulation. I used to joke around when I used to go to clubs in the 90s. We would walk into a club and, a guy would be like, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I got a modeling agency. My dad owns this modeling agency. You want to go back to my apartment? Maybe I could get you a little modeling thing here." And then you get her back to the apartment. She thinks that, you got power and then you get laid. And then she finds out you work at Subway, there were guys, "Hey, how you doing? Yeah, I got all this money. Look, I got a vet outside." And then you get scumbags say, "Yeah, it's a Chevette." But you get people out there that lie through their teeth just to get laid. And then the person, thinks that, hey, I like this guy. He's got money. He's got power. He might get me a job, this and that. Hey, I'll bang him. And then the next day you find out that the guy bullshitted and just lied. Is that criminal or is that just a pig? I don't know. That's why I always thought Joey Ryan was a pig. I don't know if it was criminal. I think Joey Ryan would see girls that were, weak, coming out of bad relationships, depressed, and he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I feel you. Oh, I'm so sad. It's nice that we could talk to each other and feel better. It's so good. You could always talk to me. I don't care. You want to make out?" And you find people when you're least vulnerable. And, I don't know if it's criminal, but Vince was not an innocent person. But again, I don't know if he was a criminal with this. I don't know. All I know is that one thing we can agree on is that after all of the years of Vince McMahon being accused of things, from Rita Chatterton back in the 80s up until, whatever you want to go into the 2020s, by then, I guarantee you, whenever Vince lowered his guard and lowered his trunks, his trousers, he probably made sure to cover all of his fucking bases. Would not be surprised if he had cameras. Would not be surprised if he had fucking audio recorders going on. Would not be surprised if he saved every fucking email and every fucking text and, just got everything. Because some people have come back and tried to sue him. Remember Saudi Arabia? Right before that Saudi Arabia deal, somebody threatened to go public unless you gave me $10 million, whatever it was. That story was always kept kind of hush-hush because they didn't want the woman to come off as, maybe somebody trying to, railroad him. They didn't want her to come off as, maybe the criminal one there. So I guarantee if Vince by then, anybody he met, he probably covered his ass. And if she's got screenshots, he's probably got them too. When he said 2:30 in the morning in that complaint, my first thoughts was, why would you say 2:30 specifically? You must have something at 2:30 in the morning. Hey, baby, you up? He's sleeping. Let me in, and I'll let you in. I'm not even trying to be funny here. You write 2:30 in the morning, you got proof that says 2:30 in the morning. I honestly think Vince McMahon is a billionaire over. That's the difference between looking at real life and looking at ad revenue. For the last several weeks, all your reading, I even saw it today. I thought it was clickbait. I thought maybe a listener asked a question, and I look, and it's Eric Bischoff and Conrad. Is Vince McMahon planning to set up his own indie promotion? After all of this, people are still throwing out, he's not. And here's an interesting thing. I don't know if it's the New York Post. There's a couple of non-wrestling sites out there, non-wrestling news outlets out there that actually reported what Vince McMahon has been up to over the last bunch of weeks and months. And that's where Dave Meltzer got the Trump would pardon Vince if Vince was found guilty, which I know a lot of you are smart enough to understand why that's impossible. But you know what they reported over the last 2 weeks? That Vince has been on a lot of vacations, that Vince has been in contact with Donald Trump, that they've been talking about, the stuff they're going through. And Vince has also hired a PR firm to help fix his image once all this gets thrown out. That's what Vince McMahon has been up to for the last couple of months. Vince McMahon is taking all his money out of WWE, and he's using it however he feels fit, whether it's to put it all a PR firm, give it to whoever else he's banging right now, for lawsuits, for lawyers. Maybe he's going to leave it to his grandkids, but Vince McMahon is not plotting to set up a company. And, what really disappoints me, from the Dutch Mantels to the Jim Cornettes to the Vince Russos to the Eric Bischoffs and all the other podcasts. And listen, I love all those shows. I still listen to them, watch them, and I will continue to do so. But what's funny is not any one of those geniuses stopped to say, who's going to wrestle for him? Who's out there that he's going to snatch up? Is he just going to have Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, and Ryback in a 3-way match 6 times a night? Like, who's going to, with John Cena, is going to jeopardize his Hollywood career to wrestle for Vince McMahon? Who's he going to sign? Joey Janela? And I'm not criticizing Joey Janela. My point is, you look at who's in the indie world out there. Who's he going to get? Mustafa Ali? Matt Hardy? Yeah, no. Who the fuck he's gonna be part of his company? Did you hear any one of those esteemed Hall of Famers turn around and say, the fuck is gonna wrestle for him? Who's he gonna get? Who's he gonna get? Who's out there? that's sitting and waiting. That's why every time you hear somebody throw that out there, basically what they're doing is like, look at these suckers. Look at these suckers. They clicked on my thing. They actually, I guarantee you, listen, I swear to God, I think Jeff Lane and Vince Russo and Conrad and Eric Bischoff and Vince McMahon and Brian Last and Dutch Mantel and I can't remember the other guy's name. I honestly think after they record these, they look at each other and go, they're going to actually buy into this. Good for them, man. If they could sucker people into just buying into this, good for them. Let them make all the money in the world. But again, not one of them took a step back and said, who's going to wrestle for him? Am I wrong? Seriously, tell me if I'm wrong. Who? Goldberg will finally have his retirement match. Maybe Goldberg can fight Vince. He could get Ronda Rousey. All right. So, do we have anything else to cover tonight? Wow, we went 2 hours and 20 minutes. Should we keep going? Should we keep going? Should we prank call this person that called me up at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night? Yeah, maybe I will. Maybe I will. Hold on a second. Maybe I will. Let me just write down the phone number. Oh, I had to make sure. I don't know who called. Let's do star 69. Let's see.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 3.
Oh, okay. Just says the number. I'll do an IntelliSearch. I'll find out who it is. My apologies, and I'm going to throw this out there anyway. You know who reached out to me again? Matt Riddle and Misha. Matt Riddle really wants to come on. He actually tunes into the shows. He enjoys what Kevin and I do. So I am going to be bringing Matt Riddle on very, very soon. We're going to do more like a Q&A format, just casual convo and other stuff. So I will be letting everybody know soon where you could submit questions. And, we're going to take the best questions. And, listen, we'll talk a little bit about Vince. We'll talk about JFK. We'll talk about a few things, I mean, I can't pay him. So I have to, I can't do Ariel Awani, but we'll have a fun conversation. So, any news on the Bro Nuts? No, not that I'm aware of. Oh, I definitely want to mention this. We had another, I keep saying Wyndham Rotunda. We had a Taylor Rotunda teaser today. Say that fast 10 times. Taylor Rotunda teaser. Remember who you are. That actually came around tonight. Was it Braun Breaker's entrance? I think it might have been someone with Braun Breaker. The screen kind of jumped a little bit. And listen, be prepared. Those things are going into SummerSlam till August. They're going to go on for a little while. I do find it interesting. Braun Strowman is on this list because everybody thinks that Braun Strowman is going to be part of the new faction that Taylor Rotunda is going to be doing. So I have not heard anything about Will Hobbs' injury, any update as of yet. I will try to have something for you by Monday. Okay. I definitely like to throw this out there. AEW Dynasty. I watched a good portion of it again. First time around, I skipped through some matches I wanted to see. I am very, very happy that Swerve won the championship. That's the reason why I wanted to see Dynasty over the weekend in the first place, and I even paid for it. I love that Nana is getting the acknowledgement also for managing the world champion. I'm a little disappointed how the first week has started with Swerve as champion. It felt like it overshadowed the Young Bucks and Jack Perry and everything else, unless they dare try to do something with Jack Perry and Swerve early. But I think Swerve will kick his ass. Jack Perry has to get his ass kicked. He has to. He's got to bleed. Jack Perry gets his ass kicked and gets bled, and he bleeds. I personally think MJF is the person that needs to do it, but, we don't know what MJF's progress is. I did watch Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay again. Is it the best match in AEW's history? For those who are saying that it is, I do not disagree. You got to understand that your immediate emotion from watching something always feels like it's the best ever. You'll get another match, you'll say it's the best ever. You get this as the best ever. Is Ilya versus Gunther the best NXT match of all time? Maybe. And you look at other matches, you say, I forgot about that match. Is it in the top 5 of AEW's greatest matches? Yeah. It could be number 1. For me, as an older guy, and I say this with nothing but respect intended, I brought this up Monday in passing, and after watching the match the second time around, it kind of just confirmed what I said on Monday. There's a lot of choreography involved in that match. And I will say this, for people out there criticizing, the sequence, I felt nothing wrong with it, because back in 1993, 1995, 1996, I was watching the same choreographics with Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrera and Psychosis. There was a lot of that. You hit a move, I hit a move. You try to hit me, I swerve. I try to hit you, you swerve. And then we both go over the top rope. We both try to drop kick each other. I saw it with Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. Not as polished, but I saw that also. We forget about matches as they go on. Plus, in 1995, you could still get away with moves that would be deemed boring today. So no, you cannot compare exactly that match to Ospreay and Danielson, because in this day and age, you got to turn it up a notch. 5 years from now, people will find reason to turn it up even further notches. All I'm saying is it the greatest match in the last 30 years? No, absolutely not. It definitely had some moments that weren't perfect. But when is a match picture perfect? When does it tell the perfect story? It doesn't. This match, definitely top 10 for matches that I could remember. But I could tell you, going back at that time, there were matches that left people just in awe. Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero one time had a match for the ages that still holds up to today. You cannot compare exactly matches from the 90s to today. The matches are different. But a lot of its sequence, that's nothing new. We saw that in the 80s. You would see that to an extent with the Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart, British Bulldog at times. You would see Dynamite Kid in Japan and do that with legendary Japanese wrestlers, Tiger Mask. Again, not on the level of today, because today everything is under a microscope. It's high definition. It's nonstop energy. You always got to go further. There's some TNA matches in the mid-2000s that if you go back and you watch them and be like, you know what? It's not exactly Danielson and Ospreay, but it's close, because that's a different era and it's still a little bit different than now. Match was tremendous. Definitely worth, all the buzz that it got. Is it the greatest match ever? For young fans out there, it could very well be, because they don't go back to the 2000s, to the 90s. And that's fine. Not everybody has to know every match that's taken place in the last 40, 50 years. So for anybody out there that you talk to who is a younger fan, and they call this the greatest match they've ever seen, respect their opinion, because that might be for them, for real, the greatest match they've ever seen. They're younger. They don't go back as far. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. A lot of the other stuff, the Jericho stuff is interesting. I don't know if the fans really want to see Jericho gone. I think they just want to sing Judas again. I just feel like, and listen, him having an FTW championship really is not, I don't know. And the Max Caster controversy, with what he said to Jay White, I don't know. I mean, I personally wouldn't have said what he said, but especially in this climate, but whatever. All right, let's finish up with some questions in the chat. Mark Hicks is asking me, did I know that Paul White was going to show up at St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1999? Honestly, we knew that the Giant left WCW. We knew that Paul White was on his way to the WWF at that time. When he arrived in the WWF, I don't put it this way. I think it was Michael Cole that might have said, that's Paul White when he first debuted. I think it was Michael Cole that said it. I still remember it to this day. It was either Kevin Kelly or Michael Cole, but one of them said it, and I was not expecting it at that particular moment. So when the St. Valentine's Day Massacre stuff happened in 99, no, I don't think so either. Was that the one with that? If that is that's one of my favorite theme songs of all time. Vince McMahon was on the cover. It's will you be my Valentine? Will you? That fucking song. When I had Tombstone Radio, that was a song that I tried to find. That was one of the hardest songs that I could find back then for my radio station. That one, Steve Carino's Old School Style in ECW, which I stole, which is funny in itself. Tajiri and Mikey Whipwreck's ECW theme with Sinister Minister at the beginning when he goes, I stole that fucking CD from this guy, Anthony. It was a DJ for USA Pro because Mikey Whipwreck wrestled on the card and he had the music. And I think he went to take a leak. He's like, "Can you watch my stuff?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I look down, I see, Mikey Whipwreck, Tajiri ECW theme. I put it in my pocket. And when I went into my car, I put it in my CD. I swear on a stack of Bibles, I put it in my CD player. And I was in my car going, it's going on Tombstone Radio, motherfucker. Those songs were so hard to get at the time. Holy shit. Roderick Howard is asking, do I think Sherry Martel is underappreciated in the wrestling world? No, she was just a different era. Us older wrestling fans that grew up with Sherry, before she even went to the WWF, especially when she ended up managing HBK, when she was in ECW for a cup of coffee, when she was Sister Sherry. Sherry Martel was actually very appreciated. Just women's wrestling was not huge like it is today. You had women's wrestling, but Sherry was legit. And honestly, when she came in as Sister Sherry with Booker T and Stevie Ray, nobody thought it was stupid. Everybody was like, she's badass. Sherry was very, very respected and loved at that time. It was a different era. It's a lot of people today never got to witness Sherry live as it was happening. Sherry was great, man. I enjoyed Sherry. I think her Dark Side of the Ring episode was this week. I mean, I'm not a fan of Dark Side of the Ring, so I'm not going to be watching it. Michael Gonzalez is asking, do I dig Cody's catchphrase? So, what do you want to talk about? Is it getting tiresome? Not really. Not really. I mean, there's a lot of people that have opening catchphrases. I mean, honestly, you know which one I'm tired of? Like The Rock back in the day would be, finally, The Rock has come back to Brooklyn. Becky Lynch copied off of it, but she doesn't have the dramatic pauses. She just shows up and she says, finally the man has arrived in Texas. in Texas. Like she does the same thing. And I'm like, the man has arrived. And I'm kind of bored at that. But Cody just saying, so what do you want to talk about? It's 5 seconds. I don't care about that. Bobby Means is asking if Miss Elizabeth was still around today, where would I put her amongst the greats? I'd put her as old as fuck. If that was the case, Elizabeth would be pretty old right now. Elizabeth would be, what, mid-60s? Elizabeth would be pretty old right now. Elizabeth was, a great valet, maybe arguably the first, beloved woman, not for the wrestling ability. Like, Miss Elizabeth will always be revered. Miss Elizabeth, I never got to know her personally. I only have heard from what people have said. A couple of people I knew personally that worked with her. Some of you know who I'm talking about. And everybody says the same thing. Very sweet woman who unfortunately, fell to the demons in the final years of her life, using illegal substances, to say it nicely. It's a tragedy. Miss Elizabeth is a tragedy. I wouldn't even put Dark Side of the Ring. It's a tragedy. People do fall from grace. To me, Dark Side of the Ring should be more criminal, should be more just really, really, sometimes tragedy happens, and I don't think Miss Elizabeth is remembered as dark-sided of wrestling. Sienna is asking, do I think the fans will turn on Cody one day? Yeah, sure. In the right town or the right state, depending on who he's feuding with, it can't be so one-sided all the time. Sooner or later, he's going to come across somebody that is very, very revered and respected. And I'm not saying that AJ Styles is not, but AJ Styles is doing a good job as a heel right now. But one day, listen, Cody, let's be honest, leading into WrestleMania, there were some places where Cody got a decent amount of boos. Doesn't mean the fans don't like Cody. They just kind of dug Roman a little bit more. So I think down the line, when he really gets played out, I think WWE will sense it and Cody will sense it, and then they'll deal with it then. Duke says Elizabeth would have turned 64 this year. Yeah, I kind of figured that because in the 80s, she was mid-20s. She was about mid-20s, so that kind of makes sense. Thank you, Dayhawk. Baron Corbin has been drafted to SmackDown. Good. Because I think Kevin and I even said that on Monday, reluctantly, but said it. Baron Corbin deserved a spot back on the main roster. He's worked hard in NXT, and even the NXT fans have acknowledged Baron Corbin for really working hard. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. Was there any other supplementals that have gone down tonight that we could share with everyone before we start wrapping this up? Dream 101 says Cody announcing the names was dopey. Yeah, that was more Triple H's request. They just wanted to have somebody there. Like, they wanted to make it seem like Nick Aldis was in the war room. That's why even Adam Pearce was not out there doing much either. I thought the whole draft today sucked. We brought it up earlier. There was only 3 or 4 people that changed brands. Andrade, Nia Jax, Braun Breaker, and Kiana James. I don't think there was anybody else that changed brands. Maybe one person. Most people stood. Today I did not enjoy SmackDown today as much as I thought I would. Thank you, Sam. Here we go. Supplementals. The OC remain on SmackDown. Cedric Alexander and Ashante Theodonis go to Raw. Okay. Shayna Baszler on Raw. Zoe Stark on Raw. Interesting. I thought one of those two would be on SmackDown. Alba Fire and Isla Dawn on Raw. Huh. Ivar, Raw as well. Ivar stays on Raw. Okay. All right. It's not bad. I mean, my immediate reaction, OC are still where they are. Corbin getting promoted is fine. Cedric and Ashante, I don't know what they're going to do on Raw, but I would have put them on fucking NXT, man. Cedric and Ashante Adonis versus the tag champs, Axiom and Nathan Frazier. Why not? Unless Cruz del Toro, Joaquin will go back. Tristan is asking, since this is the 10-year anniversary, what was my reaction to the streak being broken? Are we talking WrestleMania? I was shocked. I didn't think the streak would ever be broken. I always envisioned it in my mind, Undertaker retiring undefeated. They would have had these special shirts. You know, yeah, I still thought they would have like Blu-rays, documentaries, you know, like commemorative stuff, you know, like undefeated. The only person undefeated at WrestleMania, you know, with a certain number of matches. I never thought the streak would end. Listen, when Undertaker, you know, it's interesting. I don't want to get deep with this, but somebody asked me on Patreon. I can't remember who it was. Forgive me. But somebody asked me on Patreon my thoughts on Undertaker's 6 Feet Under podcast. I can't tune in. His co-host just angers me. I mean, I get it. He's a nice guy and he's a wrestling fan and he's an Undertaker mark. But Undertaker is so shielded on that podcast. And this guy giggling up a storm when Undertaker's talking about Tombstone and Coco Beware. And I'm like, God, you know, get off his, you know, his jock. This guy is just over the top, goofy, gushing, laughing, and it just really takes away from the show. But when Undertaker now says, oh, I feel that so-and-so should have beaten the streak or so-and-so beaten the streak. No, at the time, certain people shouldn't have beaten the streak. Most people felt it shouldn't have beaten the streak. He wasn't passing the torch to anybody but Roman. That's what it felt like later on. It was more passing the torch to Roman. And when he says now, oh, Roman should have beaten the streak. Yeah, he says that now, maybe because, you know, they decided to go with Brock, but at the time, nobody was thinking that. And honestly, if Roman would have broke the streak, it might have been a harder time for him to try to turn this shit around. Listen, I know WWE doesn't want you to believe this. Yes, it's sad to say it, but we got to admit it. Leukemia did turn Roman babyface to an extent because we're human beings. We felt bad for him. But COVID is the reason why Roman was able to take this bloodline character and fuck with it and tweak it and test it and manipulate it and do this, because he didn't have to deal with live fans wanting him, you know, when he's talking, booing him out of the building, giving stupid chants. It was Thunderdome. So it was controlled environment. So they could say whatever they want. The audio was controlled. Everything was a controlled environment. It's like, hey, if I record something and you give me all this time to edit out every little flaw, yeah, of course it's going to come out looking, you know, much better than what it is. COVID is one of the biggest, I mean, Roman obviously deserves the credit for working hard, but COVID gave him that platform to be able to do what he did. Brock was definitely the perfect choice. I didn't want the streak broken, but Brock was the perfect choice. Anybody saying otherwise is, you know, as time goes by and it wears off, it's like the reverse when people die. 10 years from now, people will convince you even more that Owen Hart should have been world champion. Brian Pillman should have been world champion. You know, listen, I loved both of those wrestlers, but I could say with a straight face that when Owen Hart was alive up until the day that he passed away, he was never in contention for a world championship. He would have never been in contention for a world championship. You got to understand at that time, Triple H and The Rock and everything else, at best, Owen Hart would have been IC champion. Owen Hart, when Brett left and Owen Hart was jumping the guardrails and trolling and attacking Triple H, that was leading to a upper mid-card feud. Owen Hart would have never gone to main event. There's a lot of people at that time that wouldn't have gone to main event. If TNA would have started a few years earlier, maybe TNA world champion. Same thing with Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman, beloved, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Brian Pillman was never, ever in the hunt to become world champion. But as the years go by, you hear more and more people, if Brian wouldn't have passed, he would have been world champion. Yeah, for IndieSchmuck.com, for Indie Wrestling and Ribs, Stan's Championship Wrestling, not WWE. Okay. We're at 2 hours and 45 minutes, but when I do the replay, I have to edit the first 3 or 4 minutes. For those on the replay, if you don't see chat room stuff, I had to edit the first 3 or 4 minutes. We had an audio blip. I got to stop, and I will not do it again. I got to stop watching like WWE Live on the same computer I do the shows, because when I go on YouTube TV, I guess it disables my other sound programs and my other, stuff. So when I turn the mixer on, I hear myself, I see myself on the meter, but apparently my computer disables it. So I guess so my browser could have the audio. So, all right. Benjamin is asking, is Bubba Ray Dudley working in the back now? And will he book horrible storylines in the WWE like Aces and Eights? No. Bubba Ray will make an appearance periodically for the WWE. It's his stuff on Busted Open is not going to change. Listen, could he be a good agent? Yeah. I don't know if he wants to do that right now, but no, they're not putting him in creative. No, he just made an appearance today for the draft. And, listen, I'm not saying this to disrespect other legends, but over the years, kind of tired of always seeing Sergeant Slaughter, Jimmy Hart, Ted DiBiase, and, whoever else that they would bring back, to make cameos. It was always the same people over and over again for the most part. Now it's time to bring back some 90s guys, bring back, the Dudleys is fine. Michelle McCool, nothing wrong with that. Tori Wilson, nice to see her make a cameo. It's a little different than the usual people that they would always bring back. So, YouTube has changed a bunch in recent releases. It now freezes the stream and chat when you go to another tab entirely. Used to let the stream go and speed the chat up to present. That's YouTube stuff. Yeah, I can't tell you why. I am going to be changing some things on the channel soon. I might be bringing back another show to do during the week if there's enough to talk about. But I'm going to be tweaking, I think, the channel memberships a little bit. Only because, I'm just going to be honest, they just haven't taken off. And, some of the content that we put there, we spend 3 to 5 hours a week, working on that stuff. And, if it's only 30 people doing it, I'm not going to hurt those people. Whoever's channel member now, you're always going to get your shit. But for other people going forward, probably not going to get the same stuff. So, I like doing Sunday nights. The thing is, though, is that there's a lot of people that were telling me to go to Sunday night, and then I would do it Sunday night, and they didn't tune in. And then once I left Sunday night, they're like, oh, we need you on Sunday nights. Plus, I have, personal stuff to deal with. I'm married. I got a real job. This doesn't pay the bills. Barely makes 3 digits over here. And it's not about making money, but, when you spend 30 hours a week, 20, 30 hours a week for the shows, you see other people, banking hundreds, if not thousands a week. And then you look and you're like, oh, I made $17. In this day and age, you have to use your time wisely. And, I can't spend 20, 30 hours doing shows. Like Monday, we did almost 3. Then it takes me another 2 to edit and put it online. So there's 5 hours there. Patreon, I do on average 2. So there's another 2 hours there. Then I'm working on preparing news and doing thumbnails and getting discussions together during the week. And that's another 2 to 4 hours. And then we do Fridays, which is another 2 to 3 hours. And then you do editing and you got to type up synopsis. Next thing you know, you're doing about 20 hours a week. So, you know, if there's enough demand for it, yeah, of course. I mean, this is not what it used to be 10, 15 years ago. And again, even that chart stuff, it's hard to compete when someone's doing 30 downloads per week, you know, for their shit, and we're only doing 2. So if there's enough demand, we'll fit it in. But, you know, I can't spend that kind of time and there's, you know, nothing back. Patreon is a different animal. Our Patreon family, you know, it's small, but they've been with us, you know, more than 2/3 of our Patreon family's been there for at least 5 years. So that never goes away. And you know what? I think I got to start doing this at the beginning of the show too. I got to give a special shout out to these awesome patrons: Brent Webster, Hassan Al-Hashmi, Anthony Smith, Christ in the Toyverse, J Deal 96, Tim Everhart, James Gruesome, Out Nahia, D-Boy Gentleman, Derek Brewer, Roger Rubio, Whisperer Rob, Garcia Kane, Pruda Kamana, Chris. I'm running out of oh shit. I'm gonna have to make it slower next time. I can't read everybody's name, but we'll do that next time. But man, I put it so slow too. And you can't read it that fast. Holy shit. But no, these are very, very special people. We got our channel members too, our made men and women. They'll shout you out in a second too. But all right, let's wrap this up. A couple of more questions and we'll get out of here. I don't want the winged belt back in the WWE. It's a beautiful belt. I like nostalgia, but we need belts to reflect today's time. I personally, you know, like if Cody brought out a retro belt, like, is that really satisfying the WWE universe, or is it just a little niche audience that still wants a little reminiscent from yesteryear? Plus, how marketable would that belt be in 2024? I'm a little surprised that Cody still has the championship that he has. I am very surprised of that. So shout out to our made men and women, these special people that are scrolling across right now. Some names are also part of our Patreon family, so big shout out to them. Thank you, Theme Parks and Things with Johnny. Much appreciated as always, my brother. Thank you very much. Trust me, I love doing this stuff. You know, I just gotta manage the time the right way. Plus, you know, I got a missus inside and I got a doggy inside. By the way, she wants a second dog. We'll talk about that next week. But big shout out to these wonderful people. Shadow D says WCW versus ECW versus AEW. You want to know something? I have an email address that I never got rid of. This is my email address, legit. I mean, if you send me an email, I probably won't answer it. I haven't checked that email in probably 15 years, but it still works. It's ECWCWWF.com. Oh, at AOL.com. That's what it is. ECWCWWF at AOL.com. Legit email address I used to have. That's how far back I go back with the shows. When I started my hotline, WCW was still around, ECW was still around, and WWE was still called the WWF. So that was my email address. I don't know. I think, especially with the belts that they designed for Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, that kind of puts, like, I think Cody is getting a new championship, but I don't think it's going to be like, it's going to have a retro feel to it, but I don't think it's going to be, you know, the wing belt, and I don't think it's going to be exactly what the tag titles are. All right, let's do 3 more questions, and let's get out of here. So again, Monday, Kevin and I will be live at 11:15. We will recap night 2 of the draft. Kevin and I will definitely talk a little bit more about Tony Khan's Harvey Weinstein remark and the Dynamite stuff. Definitely curious to see what your feedback is between now and then. I'm sure it'll influence what we get into as well. We got a few other things to get into. We have some stuff already planned. All right. Let's do 2 more questions. Let's make it good. Let's make it good. I'm totally lost about the Tony Khan stuff. I mean, I'm just totally lost. It's not even like a PR firm. You know what confuses me about it? He's brought on some non-wrestling people. I mean, Jennifer Pepperman is a sort of a wrestling person now because she was in WWE. But he brought on that other gentleman. I can't remember his name right now, but he was outside of AEW. And I'm saying to myself, what the fuck is he doing there? Like, I just can't believe that there aren't people there that are kind of like, being in his ear or, just forcing some type of restraint. I mean, I think the reason why Tony Khan is so involved in the media scrums and all these interview things is because Tony Khan, I hate to say this, I think he's an insecure, immature, rich little baby. I've said a petulant child for 3+ years, and I think that insecurity is why WWE is always the enemy and why he has to be the center of attention and he has to be the spokesman and he has to be the one doing this and he has to get the hugs and he has to, like I said, the biggest problem AEW has right now is that when the wrestlers in the WWE thank anybody, they thank the WWE Universe. Wrestlers, babyface or heel, when success happens, they thank the WWE Universe. In AEW, more times than not, the wrestlers will thank Tony Khan first, then they thank the fans. When they had the 200th Dynamite, it should have, we applaud every single person who is here, everybody who's watching us online, anybody that's ever tuned into us before. This is for all of you. This is for you. This is all about you. But no, instead, the big graphics. Thank you, Tony Khan. That's, I think, the biggest difference. It's about pleasing a baby instead of pleasing the wrestling world. It's pleasing a baby. And as long as the baby is happy, then the wrestling world should be happy too. Mighty, Mighty. Thank you, Mighty. Am I going to watch Sandman Dark Side of the Ring? No. Probably not. I'm not a fan of their stuff. They sensationalize it. They're very incomplete. The fact that they did one on Earthquake says it all. John Tenta was not Dark Side of the Ring. He died of cancer, bladder cancer. He had a great career. The fact that and I don't know if they did it because they had to do something involving Shockmaster and Tugboat. I'm like, they've jumped the shark with those episodes. I'm not a fan, and I don't think I'll ever be a fan. One year I binge watched a bunch of episodes, and I was like, all right, overall they're not too bad. I'm not a fan anymore. Not a fan. WWE will be more TV 14-ish once they go to Netflix. Right now, it's still the same. You will see a little here and there. They'll kind of push the envelope a little bit, but for the most part, they're still PG. They're not going TV 14. When they go to Netflix, it'll be a totally different story. We already talked about that, how they're going to handle advertisers, and it's going to be a little bit different, but that's not until next year. So when people say, oh, PG is over, no, it's not. All right, one more question and we'll get a jet. Any predictions for the draft on Monday? No. Kevin and I did a whole predictions preview on Monday. I will say based on what I see now for Monday, I could see, just off the top of my head, Jay Cargill definitely staying on SmackDown. The LWO is definitely going to stay on SmackDown. They're not going to put Andrade on SmackDown and then start putting LWO members on Raw. That would be asinine. Tiffany Stratton, Tiffany Stratton. Huh. Tiffany Stratton, I think, would be better on Raw. I think I would like Tiffany Stratton on Raw. I think Pete Dunne and Tyler Bates should go fucking back to NXT with all due respect. Street Profits, I think they're better on Raw. The Legado del Fantasma stay on SmackDown. Kevin Owens, I would leave on SmackDown. I don't think you need to go there again with Sami Zayn. Judgment Day, I would leave on Raw, but maybe move JD and Dominik to SmackDown, which would be very interesting when Rhea Ripley returns. I think the Final Testament, many of them will end up in NXT. I think Giovanni Vinci may end up in NXT. I would consider bringing the Kabuki Warriors to Raw, Damage Control to Raw. But if you do that, you have to move some women to SmackDown. I don't know who you move to SmackDown. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, maybe. Ivy Nile, I would consider going to SmackDown. Other than that, nobody really stands out to me. Creed Brothers, I don't want to see him in NXT. I think people would view it as a demotion, too much of a demotion. Braun Strowman, I would leave on Raw. Everybody else, from Brock to Charlotte and everybody else, they're not in the draft because of injury and they're not active right now. So, Near, thank you very much for the super shout out. He wanted to send a happy Passover to everyone. He said hard times for us Jews. Yeah, for a lot. I don't know if you saw the, I almost said Def Rebel video from earlier. That is just like awful. That's the reverse of it. I don't know if you saw the video earlier. Rewind it and you'll see. Just really, really sad to see that throw, especially when you listen to the nationality of the driver of the car. You're like, man, that's just stirring up shit, especially here in New York. Oof, that was not good. All right, guys, I'm going to jet out of here. Thank you as always. We ended up doing a much longer show than I expected, but we had fun. We definitely had shit to talk about today. Any feedback is appreciated. Let me know, your thoughts, even with the Vince stuff. Again, I hope it came across. I'm not defending the guy and I'm not sticking up for him. But, when you see that opposite side and you just try to look at a real life situation, some things kind of contradict itself. You think about her parents, 2.5, 3 years earlier. The father died 2+ years earlier. The mother died even before then. And then the lawyer claims that she didn't have a job during those 2 or 3 years, but she lived in her boyfriend's apartment rent-free, ex-boyfriend's apartment rent-free, did not work during that time. It just doesn't sound like it makes sense. Like, in what world does that happen? There's a lot, it's a weird world. The world of millionaires and billionaires is very weird. I don't think we'll ever fully understand it, but everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm going to jet out of here. Hope to catch you all again on Monday for the DTKC show. It's going to be a banger, and we'll be on dtkcdiscord.com. Be well, everybody. Much love.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster. For me to live any other way was nuts. To me, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If I wanted something, I just took it. I ran everything. I paid the bills. I paid the host. I even paid the masked maniac. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. We always called each other good fellas. You would always hear from somebody. You're gonna like Don Tony. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us. But if you're part of my crew, nobody ever tells you they're gonna get rid of you. It doesn't happen that way. There weren't any arguments or curses like in the movies. See, your haters come with smiles. They come as your friends, the people who've claimed they care the most for your life. And now that's all over. And that's the best part. Today everything is different. There's lots of action. I don't have to wait around for everything like everyone else. Oh, I didn't get the vaccine? Fuck you, vaccine me. Oh, your delivery guy has COVID? Fuck you, feed me. Right after I moved here, I ordered egg noodles and ketchup, and I got spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm no longer an average nobody, while they get to live the rest of their lives like a bunch of schnooks.